Welcome to Crime Stories for Sleep. Before we begin tonight's journey, I'd love to know, where are you listening from and what time is it right now? The town of Millbrook sits nestled between rolling hills and dense woodlands, a place where time seems to move at its own unhurried pace. Population 3,047, according to the last census, though the number fluctuates slightly with the seasons as college students come and go from the small, liberal arts campus on the eastern edge of town. Main Street stretches for exactly 12 blocks, lined with century-old maple trees that form a canopy so thick that even on the brightest summer days, the asphalt below remains cool and shadowed. The Millbrook Police Department occupies a brick building that was constructed in 1952, its facade weathered to a soft red-brown that blends seamlessly with the autumn landscape for most of the year. 3 stories high, with narrow windows that let in just enough light to illuminate the dust motes floating through the air like tiny spirits. The building houses 12 officers, 2 detectives, 1 chief, and a records clerk who has been filing reports in the same methodical manner for the past 28 years. Chief Margaret Holloway has overseen this department for 15 years, her predecessor having retired to Florida, where he spends his days fishing and sending postcards of palm trees to the station. Chief Holloway keeps these postcards pinned to a corkboard beside her office door, a small reminder of the world beyond Millbrook's borders. Her office sits at the end of a hallway lined with filing cabinets, each one filled with decades of police reports, incident summaries, and witness statements that tell the quiet story of this small town's life. The main floor of the building contains the reception area, where visitors sign in on a clipboard that hangs from a chain, the pen attached with a piece of string that has been replaced countless times over the years. Behind the reception desk, Officer Sarah Martinez handles the daily flow of paperwork, her fingers moving across keyboard keys with a rhythm that has become as familiar as her own heartbeat. She arrived in Millbrook 7 years ago, fresh from the State Police Academy, expecting to transfer to a larger city within a year or 2. Instead, she found herself settling into the steady cadence of small-town police work, where most days begin with reviewing overnight reports and end with locking the front doors at exactly 5:30. The second floor houses the Detective Bureau, though the term seems almost grand for the 2 modest offices occupied by Detective Frank Morrison and Detective Lisa Chen. Morrison has been with the department for 12 years, his desk cluttered with case files that he organizes in a system that appears chaotic to outsiders, but makes perfect sense to him. Stacks of manila folders create small towers across his workspace, each one labeled with dates written in his careful handwriting. Detective Chun joined the department 3 years ago, bringing with her a background in forensic accounting that seemed excessive for Millbrook's needs, until a series of insurance fraud cases required exactly that expertise. The 3rd floor serves as the archives, a vast repository of records dating back to the department's founding in 1952. Row upon row of metal shelving stretches from floor to ceiling, each shelf packed with boxes containing the documented history of every call, every report, every incident that has required police attention over the past 70 years. The air up here carries the scent of old paper and manila folders, a smell that newcomers find musty, but that longtime employees describe as oddly comforting. Records. Clerk Eleanor Vance spends her days navigating these archives with the expertise of a librarian, able to locate any file within minutes despite the seemingly overwhelming volume of material. She knows that the 1960s reports are filed according to case number, while the 1970s follow alphabetical order by street name, and that everything after 1985 uses a computerized system that she helped design and implement. Eleanor has read every single report filed during her tenure, not out of curiosity but out of necessity, as her job requires her to cross-reference cases, track recurring issues, and maintain the database that allows officers to search for patterns across decades of police work. The basement contains evidence storage, a climate-controlled environment where boxes of materials await their eventual disposal or permanent filing. Items range from the mundane to the puzzling, though in Millbrook, even the puzzling tends toward the quietly mysterious rather than the dramatic. A collection of antique keys found buried in Riverside Park in 1993. 7 identical postcards, addressed to different residents, all featuring the same lighthouse, discovered in various mailboxes in 2001. A leather-bound journal filled with pressed flowers and written entirely in what appears to be a personal shorthand, turned in by the family of a deceased resident in 2018. Officer David Park handles most of the evening patrol shifts, his route taking him through neighborhoods where porch lights create pools of yellow illumination against the darkness. He drives slowly through residential streets, noting which houses show signs of life and which remain dark, making mental notes about unusual activities while trying not to disturb the peace that settles over the town after sunset. His patrol car, a standard white vehicle with blue lettering, becomes a familiar sight to insomniacs and late-shift workers who wave from their windows as he passes. The police radio crackles with routine communications throughout each shift, dispatchers coordinating response to calls that range from noise complaints to requests for welfare checks on elderly residents. Officer Jennifer Walsh monitors the radio from her patrol vehicle during day shifts. Her response is logged in a computer system that tracks every interaction, every mile driven, every minute spent on each call. The data creates a digital map of the town's daily rhythms, patterns that emerge over weeks and months of careful documentation. Night shifts bring a different quality to police work in Millbrook, as the town settles into a quietude broken only by the occasional call about suspicious sounds or requests to check on businesses after closing hours. Officer Michael Santos walks foot patrols through the downtown area, his flashlight beam sweeping across storefronts and alleyways, checking door handles and looking for signs of anything amiss. The sound of his footsteps on the sidewalk becomes part of the nighttime soundtrack, as regular as the hourly chime from the clock tower at the town square. The town square itself serves as an IOP as the hourly chime from the clock tower at the town square. The town square itself serves as a town square, unofficial center of community life, though it sees more activity during daylight hours when residents cross through on their way to the post office, the library, or the small cluster of shops that includes a hardware store, a pharmacy, and a cafe that has been serving the same menu since 1987. At night, the square transforms into a peaceful space where teenagers sometimes gather on benches to talk in low voices, their conversations carrying across the grass until Officer Santos makes his rounds and they disperse to their respective homes. Millbrook's history stretches back to the early 1800s, when it began as a farming community centered around a mill that processed grain from the surrounding countryside. The original mill building still stands beside Millbrook Creek, though it now houses a small museum that opens only on weekends and receives perhaps a dozen visitors per month. Most of these visitors sign the guest book kept at the front desk, their comments expressing appreciation for the preserved machinery and the carefully maintained displays about local history. The creek itself winds through the town, passing under 3 stone bridges that were constructed during the 1920s as part of a federal works project. During spring months, the water runs high and swift, carrying fallen branches and debris from the hills upstream. By late summer, it slows to a gentle flow that barely covers the smooth stones of its bed, creating shallow pools where children sometimes wade under the supervision of parents who remember doing the same thing during their own childhoods. Police calls related to the creek tend to be seasonal and predictable, mostly involving reports of minor flooding during heavy rains or concerns about teenagers gathering near the bridges after dark. Officer Park responds to these calls with routine thoroughness, checking for any actual problems while understanding that worried residents often call simply for the reassurance of seeing a police presence. His reports note the time of each call, the specific location, and his findings, which typically involve no action needed beyond the patrol itself. The residential areas of Millbrook spread outward from the town center in a pattern that reflects decades of gradual growth. Older neighborhoods feature houses built during the early 1900s, many of them Victorian-style homes with wide porches and mature trees that create natural boundaries between properties. Newer developments occupy former farmland on the town's edges, their modern construction and carefully planned layouts creating a contrast with the organic growth patterns of the original neighborhoods. Police reports from different areas of town reveal distinct patterns, though none rise to the level of serious concern. The older neighborhoods generate calls about property disputes, noise from renovation projects, and occasional reports of suspicious persons who usually turn out to be delivery workers or contractors unfamiliar with the area. The newer developments see different types of calls, often related to traffic issues as residents adjust to increased population density or concerns about children playing in areas where busy parents might not maintain constant supervision. Officer Martinez has noticed these patterns during her years of handling dispatch duties and filing reports, though she rarely mentions her observations unless specifically asked. Her job involves maintaining neutrality while documenting everything with equal attention to detail, whether the call involves a missing cat or a report of unusual activity at an abandoned house. Every incident receives the same careful documentation, creating a comprehensive record that serves purposes beyond immediate law enforcement needs. The filing system Eleanor Vance maintains allows for multiple methods of searching and cross-referencing, essential capabilities given the interconnected nature of small-town life, where the same names and addresses appear in different contexts over the years. A resident who calls about suspicious activity might later appear in reports as a victim of theft, then years later as a witness to an accident, their interactions with police creating a paper trail that reflects their life in Millbrook across decades. Computer database supplements these physical files, though Eleanor insists on maintaining both systems due to the reliability issues that sometimes affect digital storage. Power outages, hardware failures, and software updates can temporarily limit access to electronic records, but the physical files remain available regardless of technical problems. She has seen too many requests for urgent information during situations where the computer system happened to be down to rely entirely on digital storage. Detective Morrison appreciates this redundancy during his investigations, which often require reviewing cases that span multiple years or tracking patterns that only become apparent when viewed across extended timeframes. His current caseload includes 3 active investigations, though the term active applies somewhat loosely to cases in Millbrook, where developments often unfold over weeks or months rather than days. One case involves a series of minor thefts from unlocked cars. Another concerns fraudulent use of credit cards belonging to elderly residents. And the third relates to reports of trespassing at several properties on the outskirts of town. The theft case began 6 months ago with a report from Martha Henderson, who discovered that someone had taken a pair of sunglasses and approximately $3 in change from her car, which she had left unlocked while running into the grocery store. The theft seemed minor, hardly worth a police report, but Martha filed one anyway at the suggestion of the store manager, who mentioned that several other customers had made similar discoveries in recent weeks. Morrison's investigation revealed a pattern of opportunistic thefts, all involving unlocked vehicles and all targeting items of minimal value that might not be immediately missed. The credit card fraud case presents more complexity, involving 4 elderly residents who discovered unauthorized charges on their accounts during a 2-week period in early spring. The charges were small, ranging from $15 to $40, and appeared to be for online purchases from retailers that the victims did not recognize. Detective Chun handled the financial analysis, tracing the transactions through banking records and identifying commonalities that suggested a single perpetrator. though the investigation has yet to produce any arrests. The trespassing reports share certain characteristics that have caught Morrison's attention, though he has not yet determined whether they represent connected incidents or mere coincidence. All involve properties that have been vacant for extended periods. All occurred during evening hours, and all were reported by neighbors rather than property owners. The trespassers apparently caused no damage and took nothing, leading to questions about their motivations that remain unanswered. These cases reflect the typical complexity of police work in a small town, where criminal activity tends toward the subtle rather than the dramatic, and where investigations often require patience and careful attention to details that might seem insignificant in isolation. Morrison has learned to appreciate the methodical pace required for this work, understanding that rushing toward conclusions often means missing important connections that only become apparent through thorough documentation and analysis. Officer Walsh handles many of the initial responses to reports that later develop into Detective Morrison's cases. Her patrol duties bringing her into contact with residents who notice unusual activities or report concerns about their property. Her training taught her to treat every call as potentially significant, even when the immediate circumstances seem routine or minor. A report about someone walking through an empty lot might connect to other reports about trespassing, just as a complaint about unusual noise could relate to patterns of criminal activity that only become apparent when viewed alongside other incidents. The relationship between patrol officers and detectives in Millbrook operates on principles of communication and cooperation that larger departments might find inefficient, but that work well given the town's size and the interconnected nature of local issues. Officers brief detectives about potentially related incidents during shift changes, sharing observations and impressions that supplement the formal reports filed in the database. These conversations often reveal details that might not seem significant enough to include in written documentation, but that prove valuable when cases develop over time. Chief Holloway encouraged this collaborative approach, understanding that the small size of her department means that every officer must function as both patrol personnel and investigative support. She reviews all significant cases personally, not out of mistrust but out of responsibility for ensuring that the department's limited resources are allocated effectively. Her experience has taught her that small-town crime often involves patterns that become visible only through careful analysis of seemingly unrelated incidents, making thorough documentation and communication essential for effective law enforcement. The town's relationship with its police department reflects generations of familiarity and mutual respect, though this dynamic occasionally creates challenges for officers who must enforce laws against people they encounter regularly in social settings. Officer Park lives in the same neighborhood where he patrols, shopping at the same stores and attending the same community events as the residents he serves. This familiarity can complicate law enforcement situations, but it also creates opportunities for community policing approaches that might not be possible in larger, more anonymous communities. Community policing in Millbrook often involves informal conversations that prevent situations from escalating to the point where formal police action becomes necessary. Officers know which residents are going through difficult periods, which teenagers might be experimenting with minor rebellions, and which elderly people might need occasional check-ins to ensure their safety. This knowledge allows for interventions that address problems before they require arrests or formal charges, though it also requires officers to exercise considerable discretion and judgment. The police blotter published weekly in the Millbrook Tribune reflects this community-oriented approach, listing incidents in language that conveys necessary information while protecting the privacy and dignity of those involved. Readers familiar with local personalities can often deduce details beyond what appears in print, but the official record maintains appropriate boundaries between public interest and individual privacy. Eleanor Vance prepares these summaries based on the week's reports, selecting incidents that serve the public's need for information, while excluding details that might cause unnecessary embarrassment or harm. Summer months bring predictable changes to police work in Millbrook, as longer daylight hours and warmer weather encourage outdoor activities that sometimes require police attention. The town park sees increased use, with families gathering for picnics and children using playground equipment until well after sunset. Officer Santos adjusts his patrol routes to include more frequent checks of park areas, though his presence is generally welcomed by parents who appreciate the additional security and children who wave enthusiastically from swing sets and climbing structures. College campus adds complexity to summer policing, as a reduced student population changes the dynamics of the neighborhoods surrounding the school. Houses that buzzed with activity during the academic year now stand empty, creating opportunities for trespassing or vandalism while also removing the natural surveillance provided by regular occupancy. Campus security works closely with the police department during these months, coordinating patrols and sharing information about any unusual activities observed on or around school property. Tourism increases modestly during summer months, as visitors discover Millbrook through hiking guides that mention the trails winding through the surrounding hills and forests. These visitors rarely create problems, though they sometimes require assistance with directions or recommendations for local accommodations and dining options. Officer Martinez keeps a list of current business hours and contact information for hotels and restaurants, information that proves useful when helping visitors navigate the town's limited commercial options. The seasonal rhythms of police work in Millbrook create a predictable cycle that officers learn to anticipate and prepare for, though unexpected events can still disrupt these patterns. Chief Holloway maintains staffing levels that can accommodate both routine seasonal variations and the occasional crisis that requires all available personnel. Her budget planning reflects this need for flexibility, balancing the department's regular operational costs with reserves for unusual situations that might require overtime pay or additional resources. Equipment maintenance follows its own seasonal schedule, with patrol vehicles receiving thorough inspections before winter weather arrives and communication equipment tested regularly to ensure reliability during severe weather conditions. The department maintains relationships with local contractors who can provide emergency repairs when needed, though the remote location means that some specialized equipment must be sent to distant cities for service, creating delays that require careful planning and backup systems. Training requirements for officers create additional scheduling challenges, as state law mandates continuing education that must be completed within specific timeframes. Officers typically attend training sessions in groups, traveling to regional centers where they update their certifications in areas ranging from firearms proficiency to crisis intervention techniques. These trips require temporary adjustments to patrol schedules, with remaining officers covering extended shifts or calling on part-time personnel to maintain adequate coverage. The part-time officers who supplement Millbrook's regular force include retired police personnel from larger departments and local residents who have completed police training but maintain other primary employment. These officers provide valuable flexibility, allowing the department to maintain coverage during vacation periods, training absences, and unexpected situations that require additional personnel. Their familiarity with local conditions and personalities makes them particularly effective in Millbrook's community-oriented environment. Records management becomes increasingly complex as years pass and the volume of stored information grows beyond the physical capacity of the building's archive areas. Eleanor Vance has proposed converting additional basement space for file storage, but this solution only delays the inevitable need for more comprehensive approaches to long-term records management. State regulations require retention of certain types of reports for decades, while other documents can be destroyed after shorter periods, creating a complex matrix of requirements that governs what must be kept and for how long. The process of determining which records to retain and which to destroy involves careful review of each file's contents, as documents that seem routine when first filed sometimes prove significant years later when viewed in the context of subsequent events. Eleanor has discovered connections between incidents separated by years or even decades, patterns that only become apparent through the comprehensive perspective. That comes from maintaining complete records over extended periods. Digital scanning projects have converted some older records to electronic format, but the time required for this process means that most historical files remain in their original paper form. The scanning work happens during slow periods, with Eleanor and volunteer assistants working through boxes of documents systematically, though the pace of conversion means that complete digitization would require years of dedicated effort. The police department's role in Millbrook extends beyond traditional law enforcement into areas that might be handled by other agencies in larger communities. Officers respond to medical emergencies while waiting for ambulance crews to arrive from the county hospital. They assist with traffic control during community events, and they provide security for public meetings when controversial topics generate unusual attendance. This expanded role requires officers to maintain skills and knowledge beyond standard police training, though most find the variety rewarding compared to the specialization required in urban departments. Animal control issues occupy a surprising portion of the department's time and attention, as Millbrook's rural character means that domestic animals often interact with wildlife in ways that create problems for residents. Reports of livestock wandering onto roads, aggressive dogs threatening pedestrians, and wildlife entering homes or businesses require responses that combine law enforcement authorities with practical knowledge of animal behavior. Officer Walsh has developed particular expertise in these situations, often calling on local veterinarians and wildlife officials for assistance with complex cases. The department's evidence storage area reflects the unusual nature of many cases handled in small towns, where the line between criminal activity and civil disputes often blurs. Items awaiting analysis or court proceedings include everything from disputed property boundaries marked by survey stakes to collections of mail that accumulated when elderly residents became unable to manage their correspondence. Each item must be cataloged, stored appropriately, and maintained until legal proceedings conclude or retention periods expire. Weather-related incidents create seasonal spikes in police activity, particularly during winter months when snow and ice cause traffic accidents, and power outages that require emergency response coordination. The department maintains supplies of emergency equipment, including portable generators, traffic cones, and barriers for road closures, though major weather events often require cooperation with county and state agencies that have resources beyond Millbrook's capabilities. The annual budget process requires Chief Holloway to justify every expense while planning for needs that may not become apparent until months after the budget is approved. Vehicle replacement schedules must balance the cost of new equipment against the increasing maintenance expenses of aging patrol cars, while technology upgrades compete with personnel costs for limited funding. The Town Council reviews these requests carefully, understanding their responsibility to provide adequate public safety services while managing taxpayer resources responsibly. Community relations efforts include regular participation in town events where officers interact with residents in non-enforcement contexts, building the relationships that make community policing approaches possible. The annual summer festival, winter holiday celebrations, and spring cleanup days provide opportunities for positive interactions that strengthen the bonds between police and community members. Officers volunteer for these events beyond their regular duties, understanding that community trust forms the foundation of effective law enforcement. Quiet nature of police work in Millbrook should not suggest that serious crimes never occur. though they tend to be isolated incidents rather than patterns that dominate daily operations. When serious crimes do occur, the department's response reveals the effectiveness of their preparation and training, as officers coordinate with county and state agencies to ensure proper investigation and prosecution. These cases test the department's capabilities while reinforcing the importance of maintaining professional standards, even in routine situations. As autumn arrives in Millbrook, the changing seasons bring new patterns to police work while maintaining the steady rhythm that characterizes small-town law enforcement. The leaves beginning to turn create a backdrop of red and gold against which officers continue their daily rounds, checking on residents, investigating reports, and maintaining the detailed records that tell the ongoing story of this quiet community. The work continues with methodical precision, each report and each patrol contributing to the comprehensive documentation that preserves the history of Millbrook's daily life for future reference and analysis. Asterisk. Officer David Park begins his evening shift at precisely 6 o'clock, the time when daylight starts its gradual retreat behind the hills that encircle Millbrook. His routine has remained consistent for the past 4 years, beginning with a review of the day shift reports that Officer Walsh leaves organized on the dispatch desk. Each report follows the same format, typed on standard forms that have been used by the department since the computer system was installed in 1998. Incident number, location, time, nature of call, officer response, and resolution, all documented in language that prioritizes clarity over literary flourish. The reports from the day shift typically include routine matters that require follow-up attention during evening hours. A complaint about loose dogs running through Maple Street that needs verification during the time when residents return from work. A request from the library to check on the parking situation behind their building, where staff members have noticed cars remaining overnight without explanation. A note from the Postal Service about a mailbox on Cedar Avenue that appears to have been damaged, possibly by a vehicle, though no accident was reported. Park transfers these items to his patrol log, a leather-bound notebook that he carries in his shirt pocket along with 2 pens and a small flashlight. His handwriting has evolved over years of making notes while standing beside patrol cars or walking through dimly lit areas where visibility makes careful penmanship challenging. The notebook contains pages of observations recorded during previous shifts, details that supplement the formal reports filed with the department but capture nuances that official documentation might miss. The patrol car assigned to evening shift is a Ford sedan, purchased 3 years ago to replace a vehicle that had accumulated nearly 200,000 miles during its service to the department. The new car still carries the scent of commercial cleaning products used to maintain the interior, though the vinyl seats show early signs of wear from daily use by officers of different sizes and preferences. Park adjusts the seat position, mirrors, and radio volume to his specifications before beginning his route through town. Millbrook streets follow patterns established over a century ago, when the town's founders laid out roads that connected residential areas to the commercial center while accommodating the natural topography of hills and stream beds. Main Street runs north-south through the center of town, intersected by numbered streets that extend east and west in a grid pattern that becomes less regular as it approaches the town's boundaries. The patrol route covers these streets systematically, though Park has learned to vary his timing to avoid predictable patterns that might allow problems to develop between his visits to specific areas. The first stop on his evening patrol brings him to Riverside Park, where the playground equipment stands empty as families finish their dinner preparations and children complete homework assignments. The park occupies 5 acres beside Millbrook Creek, with picnic tables, walking paths, and a small pavilion used for community gatherings during warmer months. Evening light filters through the mature oak trees that surround the playground, creating patterns of shadow and illumination that shift as Park walks through the area, checking for any signs of damage, or unusual activity. The pavilion shows evidence of recent use, with paper napkins scattered beneath one of the tables and a forgotten water bottle sitting on a bench. Park collects the litter and places it in the trash receptacle beside the parking area, making a note in his patrol log about the condition of the park. These observations serve multiple purposes, documenting his presence in the area while creating a record of park usage patterns that might prove relevant if problems develop in the future. From the park, Park drives through the residential neighborhoods that surround the town center, his route taking him past houses where porch lights have begun to illuminate front walkways and living room windows glow with the warm light of table, lamps, and television screens. The neighborhoods have distinct characteristics that reflect different periods of development and varying economic circumstances, though the differences remain subtle in a town where extreme wealth and poverty are both uncommon. Oak Street features houses built during the 1920s and 1930s, modest two-story homes with small front yards and detached garages that were added in later decades when car ownership became universal. The residents of Oak Street include several retired teachers, a postal worker, two families with school-aged children, and Mrs. Eleanor Vance from the police department, whose house sits on the corner lot where Oak Street intersects with 3rd Avenue. Park waves to Mrs. Vance as she waters the flower garden beside her front porch, a evening ritual she maintains from spring through fall. Pine Street runs parallel to Oak Street, but contains newer construction, ranch-style homes built during the 1960s when the town experienced modest population growth related to expansion at the college. These houses sit on larger lots with mature landscaping that provides privacy between properties, though the neighborhood maintains a friendly atmosphere where residents know each other by name and share information about community events and concerns. The contrast between these neighborhoods provides insights into Millbrook's demographic patterns, information that influences police patrol strategies and helps officers understand the different types of problems likely to arise in various areas. Oak Street residents tend to be older and more likely to report unusual activities they observe from their front windows, while Pine Street families often have busy schedules that limit their awareness of neighborhood happenings during weekday evenings. Park's patrol log contains observations about these patterns, notes that accumulate over weeks and months to create a comprehensive picture of each neighborhood's characteristics and needs. He has learned that Mrs. Patterson on Oak Street calls the police whenever unfamiliar cars park on her block for more than an hour, while the Johnson family on Pine Street rarely contacts police unless they observe clearly illegal activities. Understanding these tendencies helps Park provide appropriate responses to calls while managing department resources effectively. The commercial district requires different attention during evening patrols, as business owners close their establishments and secure their premises for the night. Park checks door handles and tests alarm systems, looking for signs of attempted break-ins or equipment malfunctions that might create security vulnerabilities. The hardware store, pharmacy, and cafe all maintain security systems that connect to monitoring services, but the police department serves as backup response for situations where professional security companies cannot immediately verify the nature of alarm activations. Miller's Hardware has operated on Main Street for 47 years, though the current owner purchased the business from the original Miller family 15 years ago. The store's security system includes motion detectors and door sensors that occasionally trigger false alarms when temperature changes cause building materials to expand and contract. Park has responded to 3 such alarms in the past month, each requiring a complete check of the building's interior to ensure that no actual security breach occurred. The cafe closed at 8 o'clock. Its owner, Janet Morrison, following a routine that includes checking the register, cleaning the coffee equipment, and ensuring that all food items are properly stored in refrigerated units that sometimes struggle during the hottest summer days. Park observes her locking the front door and activating the security system before she walks to her car parked behind the building. These routine observations become part of the patrol documentation, creating a record of normal business operations that helps identify unusual activities when they occur. Night patrols reveal different aspects of Millbrook's character. As the town settles into quieter rhythms and the absence of daytime traffic allows officers to notice details that might be overlooked during busier periods. Street lighting illuminates the main thoroughfares adequately, though some residential areas rely on porch lights and widely spaced municipal fixtures that create pools of brightness separated by stretches of relative darkness. College campus occupies the eastern portion of the town, its brick buildings and tree-lined walkways, creating an environment that blends with Millbrook's residential character while maintaining distinct institutional features. During the academic year, the campus generates police calls related to noise complaints, minor theft, and occasional disputes between students and neighboring residents. Summer months reduce this activity significantly, as only a small population of summer school students and maintenance workers regularly occupy campus. Facilities.Park coordinates with campus security during his patrols, sharing information about any unusual activities observed in areas where college property borders town streets. The campus security office maintains its own incident reports, but cooperation between the two agencies ensures comprehensive coverage of situations that might affect both populations. This collaboration has proven valuable during several investigations where criminal activities originated on campus but extended into the broader community. The patrol route includes periodic checks of business, areas that remain active during evening hours, particularly the gas station and convenience store located at the intersection of Main Street and Route 32, the state highway that connects Millbrook to larger cities in both directions. The convenience store attracts customers throughout the evening hours, including residents purchasing items for dinner, preparation, and travelers buying fuel and snacks for continued journeys. Officer Park has developed familiarity with the regular customers who frequent the convenience store during his patrol hours, recognizing faces and vehicles that appear routinely while remaining alert for unfamiliar persons whose presence might indicate increased security risks. The store's location makes it a natural gathering place for teenagers who have limited entertainment options in Millbrook, though the owner maintains policies about loitering that require occasional police support when groups become too large or disruptive. The gas station closes at 10 o'clock, leaving self-service fuel pumps available throughout the night under bright security lighting that creates one of the most illuminated areas in town after business hours. The lighting serves dual purposes, providing security for customers who stop for fuel during late hours while creating a beacon visible from considerable distances that can aid officers responding to calls in the area. Police archives contain decades of reports related to the convenience store and gas station, documenting the evolution of security concerns and community interactions associated with these businesses. Eleanor Vance has organized these reports chronologically, allowing officers to review historical patterns when investigating current issues. The files reveal that problems tend to be seasonal, with increased activity during summer months when travel on Route 32 peaks, and during winter periods when weather conditions strand motorists who require assistance. The archive review process that Park occasionally undertakes during slow periods has revealed interesting patterns in Millbrook's police history, connections between past and present events that might not be apparent without comprehensive record keeping. A series of minor thefts reported in 1987 involved similar methods and target selections as thefts reported 15 years later, suggesting either copycat crimes or the possibility that the same individual returned to previous patterns of criminal behavior after a long absence. These historical connections fascinate Park, who has developed appreciation for the detective work that Eleanor Vance performs while maintaining the archives. Her ability to locate relevant precedents and identify patterns across decades of Reports provides valuable support for current investigations while preserving institutional knowledge that helps newer officers understand the context surrounding current problems. The filing system in the archives allows for multiple approaches to research, with cases organized by date, location, type of incident, and involved parties. Cross-referencing capabilities mean that a single criminal incident might appear in several different categories, ensuring that officers can locate relevant information regardless of their initial search parameters. This comprehensive organization proves essential when investigating cases that span extended time periods or involve recurring patterns of criminal activity. Park has spent several winter evenings reviewing archival files, particularly those related to property crimes and unusual incidents that might connect to current cases. The process requires patience and attention to detail, as significant connections often emerge from seemingly minor details mentioned in reports written years earlier. A description of a suspicious vehicle, a note about unusual behavior patterns, or documentation of property damage can gain new relevance when viewed alongside more recent reports. The 1990s files contain numerous reports of minor vandalism incidents that occurred throughout the town, apparently random acts of property damage that caused concern among residents and challenged police investigators who struggled to identify patterns or motives. Mailboxes were damaged, lawn ornaments disappeared, and windows were broken in incidents scattered across different neighborhoods and time periods. The investigation files show extensive effort to connect these incidents, though no arrests resulted and the vandalism eventually stopped without explanation. Similar patterns appear in reports from other decades, suggesting that Millbrook experiences periodic cycles of minor criminal activity that peak and then subside without clear resolution. Park has discussed these patterns with Detective Morrison, who acknowledges their existence while noting that limited resources prevent exhaustive investigation of cases where property damage is minimal and no clear public safety threat exists. The cyclical nature of certain types of crime in Millbrook raises questions about whether the same individuals repeat patterns of behavior after periods of absence, or whether different people independently develop similar approaches to criminal activity. The archives contain insufficient information to answer these questions definitively, though the documentation preserves details that might prove significant if future investigations require historical context. Night patrols often include checks of properties that have experienced recent problems, a practice that serves both investigative and deterrent purposes. Park's current route includes 3 houses where residents have reported suspicious activities within the past month. Visits that involve driving past the properties while observing for anything unusual. These checks rarely reveal significant developments, but they demonstrate police presence to both residents and potential troublemakers while providing opportunities to observe neighborhood conditions during different time periods. The Henderson property on Elm Street has been the subject of 2 reports in recent weeks, both involving concerns about people walking through the backyard during evening hours. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly resident who lives alone, reported seeing figures moving between her house and the alley that runs behind her property line. Park's investigation found no evidence of trespassing or damage, though footprints in the soft earth beside her garden suggested that someone had indeed walked through the area. Follow-up patrols have not revealed additional suspicious activity, though Park continues to include the Henderson property in his regular route. The reports might represent nothing more than neighborhood children taking shortcuts between streets, though Mrs. Henderson's concerns deserve attention given her status as a vulnerable resident living alone in a house that offers multiple concealed approaches for anyone with criminal intentions. The Wilson House on Cedar Avenue presents different concerns, as the property has been vacant since the owner moved to a nursing facility 6 months ago. Family members visit periodically to maintain the property and collect mail, but the house remains empty and shows obvious signs of vacancy that might attract transient visitors or criminal activity. Park checks the property's windows and doors during each patrol, looking for signs of unauthorized entry while noting the gradual deterioration that affects unoccupied buildings. Vacant properties require special attention from patrol officers, as they represent both security risks and opportunities for criminal activity that can affect surrounding neighborhoods. The department maintains a list of properties known to be unoccupied, information that helps officers distinguish between normal resident activities and potential trespassing situations. Property owners or their representatives are encouraged to notify police when houses will be vacant for extended periods. Though compliance with this request varies among residents, the college area presents unique challenges during evening patrols, as the reduced summer population creates an environment where problems can develop without the natural surveillance provided by regular occupancy. Student rental houses that buzzed with activity during the academic year now stand dark and empty, their yards gradually showing signs of neglect as landlords wait for fall semester to begin before investing in maintenance work. Parks' patrol route through the college area includes checks of these vacant rental properties, looking for signs of unauthorized occupancy or vandalism that might require intervention. The properties are secured with standard residential locks rather than commercial security systems, making them vulnerable to entry by determined trespassers who understand that response to alarms or disturbances might be delayed due to the property's vacant status. Campus security officers coordinate with police patrols in this area, sharing information about any unusual activities observed during their own rounds. The collaboration helps ensure comprehensive coverage, despite the challenges created by reduced population and multiple vacant properties that require regular monitoring. Both agencies maintain incident logs that document their observations, creating a comprehensive record of conditions. In the college area during summer months, the archives contain files related to previous summer periods when vacant. College properties experienced problems ranging from minor vandalism to unauthorized occupancy by transient individuals seeking temporary shelter. These historical records provide context for current patrol strategies while documenting the recurring nature of certain problems associated with seasonal population changes. Park has noticed that certain locations consistently appear in police reports across different time periods, suggesting that geographic factors rather than temporary circumstances create ongoing security challenges. The alley behind the commercial district, the pedestrian bridge that crosses Millbrook Creek, and the parking lot beside the town park all generate reports with sufficient frequency to suggest systematic monitoring might prevent problems from escalating. Pedestrian bridge serves as a popular gathering place for teenagers during warm evenings, though their activities rarely rise to the level requiring police intervention. Parents sometimes call to express concerns about their children spending time at the bridge, worries that reflect general anxiety about unsupervised teenage activities rather than specific knowledge of problematic behavior. Park's observations during bridge area patrols typically find nothing more concerning than normal adolescent socialization. However, the bridge's location provides concealment from casual observation while offering easy escape routes in multiple directions, characteristics that could make it attractive for more serious criminal activities if current social patterns change. The archives document several investigations from previous years where criminal activities occurred near the bridge. Though no clear patterns emerge from the historical data, the parking lot beside the town park attracts different concerns, particularly regarding vehicles that remain parked for extended periods without apparent reason. Some overnight parking likely represents nothing more than residents or visitors who prefer walking to nearby destinations rather than moving their cars for short trips. However, vehicles that remain stationary for multiple days or weeks might indicate abandoned property, mechanical problems that require owner attention, or attempts to establish unauthorized camping situations. Park documents the license plate numbers of vehicles that appear to be parked for extended periods, information that allows for follow-up contact with registered owners to verify that the parking situations are legitimate. Most inquiries reveal reasonable explanations, such as owners traveling out of town or vehicles awaiting repair appointments, though the process occasionally identifies stolen vehicles or situations where drivers have become incapacitated and require assistance. The town's small size means that most residents recognize vehicles belonging to their neighbors and friends, creating an informal network of observation that supplements official police patrols. Residents often contact police to report unfamiliar vehicles parked in their neighborhoods for extended periods, information that proves valuable for officers who cannot personally monitor every location. Throughout their shifts, these citizen reports require careful evaluation to distinguish between legitimate concerns and complaints motivated by excessive suspicion of outsiders or privacy intrusions that exceed reasonable community safety interests. Park has learned to assess the credibility of various residents who file reports, understanding that some individuals possess better judgment about genuine security concerns while others tend to worry about normal activities that pose no actual threats. Balance between community vigilance and respect for privacy rights requires constant attention from officers who must respond to citizen concerns while protecting the rights of individuals who may appear suspicious simply because they are unfamiliar to local residents. The archives contain examples of investigations that began with citizen reports and ultimately revealed legitimate problems, as well as cases where concerned residents' fears proved unfounded, but their reports demonstrated valuable community engagement with public safety issues. Evening patrols provide opportunities for positive community interactions that build relationships between police and residents outside of crisis situations. Park often encounters residents walking their dogs, working in their gardens, or sitting on front porches during pleasant evenings. These casual encounters allow for informal conversations that provide officers with information about neighborhood conditions while demonstrating police accessibility to community members who might be reluctant to make formal contact through official channels. Mrs. Patterson has become a regular source of neighborhood information during Park's patrols, her front porch location providing an excellent vantage point for observing activities on Oak Street and the surrounding blocks. Her reports tend toward the dramatic, but they often contain useful details about timing, vehicle descriptions, and individual behavior patterns that supplement official incident reports. The information gathered through these informal contacts rarely rises to the level of evidence that could support criminal charges, but it provides context that helps officers understand the environment in which they work while building the community relationships that form the foundation of effective small-town policing. Residents who feel comfortable approaching officers during routine patrols are more likely to provide valuable information when serious problems arise. Park's patrol log contains pages of observations gathered during these casual interactions, details that might seem insignificant when recorded, but that contribute to his comprehensive understanding of community dynamics and potential problems. The notebook serves as both official documentation and personal reference, a resource he can consult when trying to understand connections between different incidents or identify patterns that might not be apparent from formal reports alone. The rhythm of evening patrols creates a meditative quality that Park has come to appreciate during his years with the department. The predictable route through familiar streets, the routine checks of business and residential areas, and the gradual transition from daylight to darkness all contribute to a sense of continuity that connects each evening's work to the broader mission of community safety and order. The police radio provides periodic interruptions to this rhythm, though evening shift calls in Millbrook tend toward the routine rather than the urgent. requests for welfare checks on elderly residents, noise complaints from neighbors concerned about loud music or parties, and reports of minor traffic accidents that require incident documentation but rarely involve serious injuries or property damage. These routine calls represent the vast majority of police work in small towns, though their mundane nature should not suggest that they lack importance for community safety and quality of life. Each call receives the same professional attention and thorough documentation as more dramatic incidents, creating a comprehensive record of police services that demonstrates the department's value to community members and municipal officials responsible for budget decisions. The documentation process for routine calls follows established procedures that ensure consistency and completeness, while allowing officers to include relevant details that might not fit standard report formats. Park has developed skill at writing reports that convey necessary information clearly while maintaining the neutral tone required for official documentation that might be reviewed by attorneys, insurance companies, or other agencies with legitimate interests in police activities. Evening patrols conclude with a return to the police station, where Park completes paperwork related to his shift activities and prepares briefing materials for the night shift officer who will continue coverage until morning. The transition between shifts requires communication about ongoing situations, unusual observations, and any circumstances that might require follow-up attention. During later patrols, the station building takes on different characteristics during evening hours, as most administrative staff have departed and the building's interior relies on emergency lighting systems that provide adequate illumination while reducing energy costs. The quiet atmosphere reflects the reduced activity levels typical of small-town evening hours, though officers remain available to respond to calls that might arise during overnight periods. Park shift reports become part of the comprehensive documentation system that Eleanor Vance maintains, contributing to the historical record that preserves details about daily police activities for future reference. The accumulation of these reports over weeks, months, and years creates a detailed portrait of community life that serves purposes beyond immediate law enforcement needs, providing researchers, planners, and future officers with insights into the patterns and trends that shape small-town policing requirements. Archives continue to grow with each shift report, each incident documentation, and each observation recorded by officers who understand that their work contributes to a larger understanding of community safety and security needs. The methodical documentation of routine activities creates the foundation for more complex investigations while preserving the institutional memory that allows experienced officers to recognize patterns and connections that might escape notice without comprehensive record-keeping. As Park completes his final reports and prepares to leave the station, the building settles into the quiet rhythm that characterizes nighttime hours in Millbrook. The steady accumulation of documentation continuing as officers work through their shifts to maintain the detailed records that tell the ongoing story of this small town's daily life. Asterisk. The first report of missing garden ornaments arrived on a Tuesday morning in late March, filed by Margaret Henley of Birch Street, who discovered that 3 ceramic gnomes had disappeared from her front flower bed sometime during the previous night. The gnomes had occupied the same positions beside her driveway for 18 months, weathering 2 winters and numerous storms, without incident until they vanished without leaving any trace of their removal or the identity of whoever had taken them. Officer Martinez documented the incident with standard thoroughness, photographing the locations where the gnomes had been positioned and noting the absence of disturbed soil or vegetation that might indicate hasty removal. The theft seemed minor, hardly worth police attention except for Mrs. Henley's insistence that the ornaments held sentimental value as gifts from her deceased sister. The report joined the growing collection of seemingly unrelated incidents that had begun accumulating in Detective Morrison's case files. 3 days later, Robert Chun reported the disappearance of a decorative bird bath from his backyard on Maple Street, approximately 6 blocks from the Henley property. The bird bath, constructed of concrete and weighing nearly 40 pounds, had been positioned beside a garden shed where it remained undisturbed for 5 years until someone removed it, without authorization. Chun's report noted that the theft occurred despite the presence of more valuable items in his yard, including garden tools and outdoor furniture that remained untouched. The pattern might have remained unnoticed except for Eleanor Vance's systematic approach to filing reports, which included cross-referencing incidents by type, location, and other characteristics that might reveal connections between apparently separate events. Her review process identified similarities between the garden ornament thefts that warranted additional attention, leading to a discussion with Detective Morrison about the possibility that a single individual might be responsible for both incidents. Morrison's investigation revealed additional unreported thefts discovered when he contacted residents of streets adjacent to the Henley and Chun properties. Mrs. Davis on Oak Street mentioned that her garden stepping stones had disappeared several weeks earlier, though she had not filed a police report because she assumed neighborhood children had moved them during play activities. The Williamson family on Pine Street reported that decorative rocks bordering their flower beds had been relocated to different positions in their yard, an incident they attributed to wildlife until Morrison's inquiry suggested human involvement. The investigation expanded to include door-to-door inquiries throughout the affected neighborhoods, revealing a pattern of minor thefts and property disturbances that residents had dismissed as isolated incidents until viewed as components of a larger series of related activities. Garden decorations, outdoor ornaments, and landscaping materials were disappearing from yards throughout the residential areas surrounding the town center, apparently taken by someone with specific preferences for certain types of objects. The thief demonstrated selectivity in target choices, ignoring valuable items such as bicycles, lawn mowers, and outdoor furniture while focusing exclusively on decorative elements that served no obvious practical purpose. Concrete planters vanished while expensive plants remained undisturbed. Decorative windmills disappeared while garden sheds filled with tools remained secure. The pattern suggested motivations beyond simple monetary gain, raising questions about the psychological factors driving the criminal behavior. Morrison's case files began filling with reports, photographs, and witness statements related to the garden ornament thefts, documentation that revealed the systematic nature of the criminal activity while failing to identify the individual responsible. The crimes occurred during nighttime hours when visibility was limited, and residents were unlikely to observe suspicious activities. No witnesses reported seeing unfamiliar vehicles or individuals in the affected neighborhoods during the time periods when thefts occurred. The investigation expanded beyond Millbrook's residential neighborhoods when Morrison learned that similar thefts had been reported in surrounding rural areas, where properties offered greater isolation and reduced surveillance opportunities. The Hendrickson farm reported missing decorative elements from around their farmhouse, including a weather vane and several ceramic animals that had decorated their front porch. The objects had no significant monetary value but had belonged to the family for decades, making their loss emotionally significant despite the minor economic impact. Rural thefts presented different challenges for investigation, as the properties involved were separated by considerable distances and surrounded by fields of forests that provided concealment for criminal activities. The perpetrator could approach these properties from multiple directions while avoiding detection by neighbors who might be too distant to observe suspicious activities. Vehicle access was available through farm roads and service lanes that received little traffic and no regular patrol coverage. Expansion of theft activities into rural areas suggested either escalating boldness on the part of the perpetrator or the possibility that multiple individuals were involved in related criminal activities. Morrison coordinated with county sheriff's deputies who patrolled rural areas beyond Millbrook's municipal boundaries, sharing information about the theft patterns while requesting additional attention to properties that might be vulnerable to similar crimes. Meanwhile, reports of abandoned houses began appearing with unusual frequency in the police department's incident logs, though the connection to the garden ornament thefts was not immediately apparent. Citizens reported observing lights in houses known to be vacant, sounds emanating from supposedly empty buildings, and evidence of recent occupancy in properties where no authorized residents should be present. The first significant report involved the old Patterson house on the outskirts of town, a Victorian-era structure that had been vacant since the elderly owner moved to a nursing facility 2 years earlier. Neighbors reported seeing lights in the upstairs windows during evening hours, though no electricity service was connected to the property, and family members claimed no knowledge of anyone having legitimate access to the building. Officer Park investigated the Patterson house report by walking the property perimeter and examining accessible windows and doors for signs of unauthorized entry. He discovered that a basement window had been opened and that fresh footprints in the soft earth beside the foundation suggested recent human activity. The investigation revealed evidence of temporary occupancy, including food containers, bedding materials, and personal items that indicated someone had been using the house as a shelter. The discovery raised questions about the relationship between unauthorized occupancy of vacant properties and the garden ornament thefts, though no clear connections emerged from the initial investigation. However, additional reports of activity at abandoned houses began accumulating in the police files, suggesting that transient occupancy of vacant properties might be more widespread than previously recognized. Werner House on Elm Street generated the next significant report, with neighbors observing smoke from the chimney during a warm spring evening when no heating would be necessary and no authorized occupant should be present. Investigation revealed evidence of recent fires in the fireplace, along with food preparation activities in the kitchen despite the absence of utility services. Personal belongings found throughout the house suggested extended occupancy by someone who had established a temporary residence without permission. The pattern of unauthorized occupancy raised concerns about public safety risks associated with people living in buildings without proper utility services, fire safety equipment, or emergency communication capabilities. Vacant houses presented numerous hazards for unauthorized occupants, including structural problems, electrical issues, and contamination from rodents or other wildlife that might have inhabited the buildings. During vacancy periods, Detective Morrison began coordinating investigation of the unauthorized occupancy cases with the garden ornament theft investigation, looking for connections that might link the two series of crimes. The timing of both phenomena suggested possible relationships, though the motivations appeared different and no physical evidence connected specific individuals to both types of criminal activity. The investigation process revealed gaps in property security arrangements that made unauthorized occupancy relatively easy for determined individuals. Many vacant houses relied on standard residential locks that could be defeated by people with basic breaking and entering skills, while others had been left unsecured by owners who assumed that remote locations or obvious vacancy would deter trespass attempts. Property owners received notifications about the unauthorized occupancy discoveries, along with recommendations for improved security measures that might prevent future incidents. Some owners responded by installing better locks, security systems, or regular inspection schedules, while others seemed unconcerned about trespassing in buildings they considered to have little value. The response variations created an uneven security environment where some vacant properties became more difficult targets, while others remained vulnerable to continued unauthorized occupancy. Morrison noted these differences in his case files, understanding that criminal activity tends to concentrate in areas where opportunities are most readily available. Spring weather brought increased reports of unusual activities as longer daylight hours and warmer temperatures encouraged outdoor activities that made suspicious behaviors more visible to observant residents. Citizens reported seeing unfamiliar individuals walking through neighborhoods during hours when most people were at work, vehicles parked in unusual locations without apparent purpose, and sounds emanating from properties where no activity should be occurring. The increased visibility created opportunities for gathering information about possible connections between different types of criminal activity, though it also generated reports about innocent activities that appeared suspicious to residents who were becoming more vigilant about security issues. Officers learned to distinguish between reports that warranted investigation and complaints about normal activities that seemed unusual only because residents had become hypersensitive to potential threats. Mrs. Patterson began filing weekly reports about activities she observed from her front porch location, her enhanced vigilance producing detailed descriptions of vehicles, individuals, and timing patterns that might prove valuable for ongoing investigations. Her reports included license plate numbers, physical descriptions, and behavioral observations that demonstrated remarkable attention to detail, though the significance of most observations remained unclear. Without additional context, the accumulation of citizen reports created a comprehensive database of activities occurring throughout Millbrook's neighborhoods, information that allowed investigators to identify patterns and connections that might not be apparent from individual incident reports. Eleanor Vance developed a cross-referencing system that allowed searches by date, location, vehicle description, individual characteristics, and other factors that might reveal relationships between apparently separate observations. Cross-referencing process began revealing connections between citizen reports and official police incidents, suggesting that the various criminal activities might be more closely related than initially apparent. Reports of unfamiliar individuals walking through neighborhoods correlated with timing patterns for garden ornament thefts. Vehicle sightings near vacant houses matched descriptions of suspicious vehicles reported in residential areas where thefts had occurred. These correlations suggested the possibility that a single individual or small group might be responsible for multiple types of criminal activity, using abandoned houses as temporary bases while conducting theft operations in surrounding neighborhoods. The theory remained speculative without direct evidence linking specific individuals to the crimes, but it provided a framework for organizing investigative efforts and focusing patrol activities on areas where problems seemed most concentrated. The investigation expanded to include systematic monitoring of all known vacant properties within and around Millbrook, a process that required coordination between police patrols, property owners, and concerned neighbors who agreed to report any unusual activities they observed. The monitoring effort revealed the surprising number of properties that remained unoccupied for extended periods, creating numerous opportunities for unauthorized occupancy that had not been recognized previously. Some vacant properties had been abandoned by owners who could no longer afford maintenance costs or who had moved away without arranging for property management services. Others remained empty while family members disputed inheritance issues or waited for real estate market conditions to improve before attempting sales. Each situation created different security challenges and legal complications that affected how police could respond to reports of unauthorized occupancy. The legal framework governing trespassing and unauthorized occupancy varied depending on property ownership status, the intentions of individuals found on the properties, and the duration of occupancy before discovery. Officers required guidance from the district attorney's office about appropriate charges for different situations, particularly cases where individuals claimed to be homeless and seeking shelter rather than committing crimes for financial gain. These legal complications created frustration for officers who understood that unauthorized occupancy represented safety risks regardless of the occupant's motivations, but who also recognized that housing insecurity represented social problems that extended beyond law enforcement capabilities. The department began coordinating with social service agencies to ensure that individuals found living in abandoned properties received appropriate assistance rather than simply facing criminal charges. The coordination effort revealed the limited resources available for addressing homelessness and housing insecurity in rural areas where social services were concentrated. In larger cities and transportation options were limited, individuals who found themselves without housing often had few alternatives to unauthorized occupancy of vacant buildings, creating ongoing challenges for law enforcement agencies that lacked authority to address underlying social problems. Detective Morrison's investigation files grew to include social service referrals, property owner contact information, and documentation of the complex factors contributing to unauthorized occupancy situations. The comprehensive approach reflected understanding that criminal justice responses alone could not address problems that resulted from broader social and economic circumstances beyond police control. Meanwhile, the garden ornament thefts continued with apparent randomness that frustrated investigative efforts to predict where the next incidents might occur. The perpetrators seemed to avoid patterns that might allow police to anticipate target selections, though geographical analysis suggested concentration in into neighborhoods with particular characteristics that might influence target vulnerability. Areas with mature landscaping and established decorative elements attracted more theft activity than newer developments where residents had not yet invested significantly in outdoor ornamentation. Properties with limited visibility from neighboring houses experienced higher theft rates than those situated where criminal activity would be easily observed by residents or passersby. The geographical patterns provided insights that helped focus patrol activities and citizen awareness efforts, though they did not produce sufficient specificity to allow prediction of particular properties likely to be targeted. Officers increased attention to vulnerable areas while encouraging residents to take precautions that might deter theft attempts or preserve evidence that could aid investigations. Resident education efforts included recommendations for lighting improvements, strategic placement of valuable decorative items, and documentation procedures that might help recover stolen property or identify individuals responsible for thefts. Some residents installed motion-activated lights or security cameras, though the costs and technical requirements limited adoption of these measures to households with sufficient resources and technical expertise. The varying levels of security enhancement created a patchwork environment where some properties became more difficult targets, while others remained vulnerable to continued criminal activity. Morrison observed that crime tends to concentrate in areas offering the best opportunities for success while avoiding locations where risks are higher or potential rewards are smaller. The phenomenon known as crime displacement became apparent as enhanced security in some neighborhoods seemed to push criminal activity toward areas where property owners had not implemented protective measures. The displacement effect required consideration of community-wide approaches to security enhancement, rather than solutions that simply shifted problems from one location to another. Community meetings organized by the police department provided forums for sharing information about criminal activity patterns while encouraging coordinated responses that might be more effective than individual security measures. The meetings attracted residents from different neighborhoods who compared their experiences and observations while learning about investigative progress and prevention strategies. The community engagement process revealed the emotional impact of property crimes that extended beyond financial losses to include feelings of violation, vulnerability, and frustration with the apparent randomness of target selection. Residents who had experienced thefts expressed concerns about escalation to more serious crimes, though police emphasized that property crimes did not necessarily indicate progression toward violent criminal behavior. The psychological aspects of crime prevention became part of the department's community education efforts, as officers learned that addressing resident fears and concerns was essential for maintaining public confidence in police effectiveness. Providing information about investigative progress, even when cases remained unsolved, helped reassure community members that their problems were receiving appropriate attention. Officer Walsh began specializing in community liaison activities that connected police investigative efforts with resident concerns and observations. Her background in social work proved valuable for understanding the broader impacts of criminal activity on community well-being while helping residents develop realistic expectations about investigation timelines and likely outcomes. The community liaison role required balancing law enforcement needs for confidential investigative information with community demands for transparency about police activities and progress towards solving ongoing problems. Walsh learned to communicate about investigations in ways that informed residents without compromising operational security or creating unrealistic expectations about immediate solutions. The accumulation of case files, citizen reports, and investigative documentation created a comprehensive picture of criminal activity patterns that suggested complex relationships between different types of incidents. The garden ornament thefts, unauthorized occupancy discoveries, and citizen observations of suspicious activities appeared to be components of larger patterns that extended beyond simple property crimes. Morrison's analysis suggested that Millbrook was experiencing organized criminal activity conducted by individuals or groups who had developed systematic approaches to identifying targets, conducting crimes, and avoiding detection. The organization level appeared modest compared to sophisticated criminal enterprises, but it demonstrated planning and coordination that exceeded random opportunistic criminal behavior. The investigative challenge involved gathering sufficient evidence to support criminal charges against specific individuals while understanding the broader context that encouraged or enabled criminal activity in the community. The process required patience and methodical documentation that might not produce immediate results but that created foundations for more comprehensive law enforcement responses as evidence accumulated. Eleanor Vance's archival research began revealing historical patterns that provided context for current criminal activity, suggesting that Millbrook had experienced similar phenomena during previous decades when social and economic conditions created opportunities for organized, minor criminal activity. The historical precedents offered insights into investigation strategies while suggesting that current problems might be cyclical rather than representing entirely new challenges. The cyclical nature of certain types of criminal activity in small towns reflected broader social patterns that influenced individual behavior and community vulnerability to various types of problems. Understanding these cycles helped police develop more effective responses while managing community expectations about the time required to resolve complex criminal activity patterns. As spring progressed toward summer, the various investigations continued accumulating evidence and developing leads that might eventually produce arrests and prosecutions. The methodical pace reflected the nature of criminal activity that had developed over months or years rather than emerging as immediate crises requiring urgent responses. The ongoing investigations demonstrated the value of comprehensive documentation and systematic analysis in addressing criminal activity that might appear random or disconnected when viewed as individual incidents. The police department's commitment to thorough record-keeping and pattern analysis provided tools for understanding complex problems while building cases that could withstand legal scrutiny. Patient accumulation of evidence continued as officers pursued leads, interviewed witnesses, and documented observations that might prove significant for resolving the various cases that had become central to the department's investigative priorities during the spring months of what would prove to be a particularly eventful year in Millbrook's recent history. Asterisk. The police reports from 2015 began with routine documentation that filled manila folders throughout January and February, creating a foundation of recorded observations that would gain significance only when viewed alongside patterns emerging in subsequent years. Officer Janet Kowalski, who had since transferred to a department in the state capital, maintained meticulous records during her 3-year tenure in Millbrook, her reports distinguished by detailed descriptions and careful attention to seemingly minor details that other officers might have overlooked. Her January 15th report documented a call about unusual sounds emanating from the basement of the old Hartwell house on Cherry Street. Sounds that neighbors described as rhythmic tapping that continued for several hours during the early morning darkness. Investigation revealed no signs of unauthorized entry, though Officer Kowalski noted that the basement windows appeared to have been recently cleaned. Despite the property's vacant status, the family who owned the house could provide no explanation for the clean windows or the sounds that prompted the call. 3 weeks later, Kowalski responded to a report of someone walking through the backyard of the Morrison property on Walnut Street, an incident that occurred during the pre-dawn hours when visibility was limited and identification of the individual was impossible. Footprints in the snow confirmed that someone had indeed walked through the property, following a path that led from the alley behind the house to the street frontage, without approaching the building itself. The track suggested purposeful movement rather than random wandering, though no apparent motive for the nighttime transit could be determined. February brought reports of missing newspapers from front porches throughout the Pine Street neighborhood, incidents that initially seemed too minor to warrant police attention until the pattern became apparent through citizen complaints filed over a 2-week period. 8 households reported that their newspapers had been taken during the night, though delivery confirmation from the newspaper office verified that the papers had been delivered at the normal time. The thefts occurred on different streets and different delivery days, suggesting systematic rather than opportunistic criminal activity. Officer Kowalski's investigation of the newspaper thefts revealed that only certain publications were targeted, specifically the weekend editions that contained more sections and advertising materials than daily papers. The selective nature of the thefts suggested that the perpetrator had specific reasons for wanting particular newspaper content, though subscribers who had their papers stolen could identify no obvious connections between their households or their subscription preferences. Newspaper theft investigation expanded when Kowalski learned that similar incidents had been reported in surrounding communities during the same time period, suggesting that a single individual or group might be conducting theft operations across multiple jurisdictions. Coordination with sheriff's deputies and police departments in adjacent towns revealed patterns that extended beyond Millbrook's boundaries, indicating organized criminal activity that required broader law enforcement cooperation. Multi-jurisdictional investigation revealed that newspaper thefts had been occurring throughout the region for several months, though individual departments had not recognized the broader pattern until information sharing identified connections between cases that appeared isolated when viewed from single community perspectives. The discovery highlighted the importance of interagency communication for understanding criminal activities that cross municipal boundaries. March 2015 brought the first reports of what would become known as the garden inspection incidents, though the terminology would not emerge until much later when patterns became apparent through archival review. Citizens reported observing unfamiliar individuals walking slowly through residential neighborhoods during daylight hours, apparently examining front yards and garden areas with unusual attention to detail. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, then working her 15th year as records clerk filed a report about an individual who spent approximately 20 minutes standing beside the fence surrounding her neighbor's garden, apparently studying the layout and plantings with notebook in hand. The individual appeared to be taking notes or making sketches, though he departed when Mrs. Vance approached her front window and made her observation obvious. Similar reports accumulated throughout March, describing individuals who demonstrated intense interest in residential landscaping and outdoor decorative elements. The observers appeared to be conducting systematic surveys of neighborhood properties, though their purposes remained unclear and no immediate criminal activity was associated with their presence. Property owners who were approached by these individuals reported that they claimed to be conducting research for landscaping businesses or home improvement services. Asterisk. The landscaping survey reports might have been dismissed as legitimate business activities, except for the unusual timing and methods that distinguished them from normal commercial interactions. Legitimate landscaping professionals typically contacted property owners directly to discuss services rather than conducting unannounced surveys from public sidewalks. The individuals conducting surveys often avoided contact with residents, departing quickly when approached or questioned about their activities. Officer Kowalski's investigation of the survey reports revealed that none of the individuals could be connected to established landscaping businesses in the region, though several used business cards with generic titles that provided no meaningful contact information. Phone numbers on the cards either did not work or connected to answering services that provided no additional information about the supposed businesses. The investigation expanded to include inquiries with the state licensing agency that regulates landscaping contractors, revealing that none of the businesses mentioned by the survey individuals were registered or licensed to operate in the state. The discovery suggested fraudulent representation of business purposes, though proving criminal intent would require evidence that the individuals were planning illegal activities rather than simply conducting unauthorized market research. April brought changes in the pattern of unusual incidents, as reports shifted from survey activities to more direct property interactions. Citizens reported finding business cards left in mailboxes or wedged into door frames, cards that advertised landscaping services but provided contact information that could not be verified. The cards appeared overnight without residents observing their placement, suggesting that distribution occurred during hours when visibility was limited. The business card distribution campaign raised questions about the FIO connections between the earlier survey activities and what appeared to be preparation for soliciting landscaping services. However, residents who called numbers on the cards received either no response or conversations with individuals who seemed unfamiliar with specific properties or previous survey activities. The disconnect between survey observations and follow-up services suggested that different purposes might be involved. Detective Morrison, then a patrol officer conducting his first significant investigation, began coordinating response to the business card incidents with the earlier survey reports, looking for patterns that might explain the apparent evolution from observation to solicitation activities. His systematic approach to documentation would later prove valuable when the case files were reviewed in connection with more recent criminal activities. Morrison's early investigation revealed that the business cards had been printed by a commercial printing service in a city 60 miles from Millbrook, paid for with cash by an individual who provided contact information that could not be verified. The printing order included 5,000 cards, suggesting distribution plans that extended far beyond Millbrook's residential areas. The investigation of business card distribution led to discoveries about similar activities in communities throughout the region, confirming that Millbrook was part of a larger operation that covered multiple counties and dozens of municipalities. The scope suggested organized criminal activity with resources and planning capabilities that exceeded typical local crime patterns. Summer 2015 brought the first reports of actual landscaping thefts that would later be recognized as connected to the survey and business card. Activities documented during previous months. Garden ornaments, decorative plants, and outdoor furniture began disappearing from properties throughout Millbrook. Thefts that demonstrated knowledge of property layouts and valuable items that suggested prior surveillance activities. The thefts initially appeared random, though review of previous reports revealed that many targeted properties had been visited by survey individuals or had received business cards during earlier phases of the operation. The connection between preparatory activities and actual crimes became apparent only through comprehensive analysis of incident reports spanning several months of documentation. Officer Martinez joined the FAN investigation during July, bringing organizational skills that helped coordinate information from multiple sources while maintaining detailed tracking of investigative progress. Her background in business administration proved valuable for understanding the systematic approaches that characterized the criminal operation, particularly the methodical progression from surveillance to targeting to theft. Execution. The investigation process revealed the sophisticated planning that preceded individual theft incidents, with perpetrators demonstrating knowledge of property owners' schedules, security measures, and neighborhood watch patterns that suggested extensive preparation. The level of organization exceeded what officers typically encountered in small-town property crimes, requiring investigative approaches more commonly used for complex criminal enterprises. August brought the first arrests related to the landscaping theft operation, when Officer Santos observed suspicious activity at a property on Elm Street during his evening patrol. Two individuals were loading garden ornaments into a vehicle, working efficiently in darkness while using minimal lighting that suggested familiarity with the property layout. Santos's intervention led to arrests that provided the first direct evidence connecting specific individuals to the theft. Activities. The arrested individuals possessed notebooks containing detailed information about dozens of properties throughout Millbrook and surrounding communities. Documentation that revealed the extensive surveillance operation that had preceded the theft activities. Maps, schedules, and property descriptions provided evidence of systematic criminal planning that helped prosecutors build cases that extended beyond the immediate theft charges. Notebooks contained information that connected the current arrests to months of preparatory activities, providing evidence that the survey individuals and business card distributors were part of the same criminal organization. The documentation allowed police to close multiple unsolved cases while understanding the broader scope of criminal activities that had affected the community. Fall 2015 brought conclusion to the landscaping theft investigation, with additional arrests and recovery of stolen property that had been stored in a warehouse facility in a neighboring county. The recovery operation revealed the substantial scale of theft activities, with hundreds of stolen items representing criminal activity across multiple communities and several months of systematic operations. The investigation's conclusion provided insights into organized property crime that influenced police procedures and community education efforts for years afterward. The systematic approach used by the criminal organization demonstrated vulnerabilities in small-town security practices while highlighting the importance of interagency cooperation for addressing crimes that cross jurisdictional boundaries. The winter months of 2015 and early 2016 brought a return to more typical criminal activity patterns as the landscaping theft organization was disrupted by arrests and prosecutions. However, the archives from this period document subtle changes in community behavior that reflected lasting impacts from the earlier criminal activities. Citizens demonstrated increased vigilance about unfamiliar individuals, conducting surveys or soliciting services, reporting suspicious activities more frequently, and maintaining enhanced security measures for outdoor property. The community response created an environment where subsequent criminal activities would face greater resistance from informed residents who understood the methods used by organized theft operations. The police reports from 2016 reflected this changed environment, with citizen observations providing more detailed and useful information about suspicious activities, while false alarm rates remained manageable due to education efforts that helped residents distinguish between legitimate business activities and potential criminal surveillance. Spring 2016 brought new patterns of unusual incidents that differed from the previous year's organized theft activities but demonstrated similar systematic approaches to criminal planning. Citizens reported seeing individuals taking photographs of residential properties, apparently documenting architectural features and security measures without seeking permission from property owners. The photography incidents occurred throughout Millbrook's residential areas, affecting properties with various architectural styles and security characteristics. The photographers used professional quality equipment and appeared to be working from predetermined lists of target properties, suggesting organized rather than random documentation. Activities. Officer Park's investigation of the photography reports revealed that the individuals claimed to be conducting insurance assessments or real estate evaluations when questioned by residents. However, contact with insurance companies and real estate agencies in the region confirmed that none had authorized such photography activities, suggesting fraudulent representation of business purposes. The investigation expanded to include analysis of photography patterns, revealing that targeted properties shared certain characteristics that might explain their selection for documentation. Houses with particular architectural features, specific types of security systems, or certain landscaping elements appeared more frequently in photography reports than would be expected from random selection. Summer 2016 brought escalation of the photography activities as reports shifted from individual observers to organized teams that appeared to be conducting comprehensive surveys of entire neighborhoods. Citizens reported seeing groups of individuals with cameras and measuring equipment conducting detailed documentation of residential areas over extended time periods. The team survey activities raised concerns about criminal planning that might be more ambitious than previous theft operations, though the specific purposes remained unclear until autumn, when new types of criminal activity began appearing in police reports. The connection between documentation activities and subsequent crimes would become apparent only through careful analysis of incident timing and target characteristics. The police reports from late 2016 and early 2017 documented the emergence of what became known as the utility disturbance incidents, criminal activities that demonstrated knowledge of residential infrastructure systems that could only have been acquired through detailed prior surveillance. Citizens reported problems with electrical, water, and communication services that appeared to result from deliberate interference rather than accidental damage or equipment failures. The utility disturbances affected properties throughout Millbrook, though analysis revealed concentration in areas where photography teams had been observed during previous months. The correlation between surveillance activities and subsequent infrastructure problems provided evidence of organized criminal activity that was evolving from simple theft toward more sophisticated forms of property crime. Detective Morrison's investigation of utility disturbance incidents required coordination with infrastructure service providers who maintained records of equipment problems and repair activities. The investigation revealed patterns of damage that required specialized knowledge of utility systems, suggesting that the criminal organization had recruited individuals with technical expertise. Utility incidents created public safety concerns beyond property crime issues, as interference with electrical and water systems could create health and safety hazards for residents. The escalation from theft to infrastructure damage represented a qualitative change in criminal activity that required enhanced law enforcement responses and community protection. Measures. The investigation process revealed connections between utility disturbance incidents and earlier criminal activities through analysis of documentation found during previous arrests. The notebooks and maps seized from landscaping theft suspects contained infrastructure information that gained new significance when viewed alongside reports of deliberate utility damage. Spring 2017 brought the first reports of what would later be recognized as the precursor to current unauthorized occupancy incidents, though the connection would not become apparent until years later when archival research revealed patterns spanning multiple years. Citizens reported unusual activities at vacant properties, including evidence of recent occupancy and utility usage at houses where no authorized residents should be present. The 2017 occupancy reports differed from current incidents in scope and duration, involving temporary use of vacant properties rather than extended residential establishment. However, the methods used to gain access and the selection criteria for target properties demonstrated continuity with patterns that would resurface in more recent criminal activities. Officer Walsh's investigation of the 2017 occupancy incidents revealed evidence of organized coordination between different types of criminal activity, with vacant property intrusions serving as support for other criminal operations rather than representing independent housing-related crimes. The discoveries provided insights into criminal organization, methods that would prove valuable for understanding more recent developments. The summer of 2017 marked a transition period when organized criminal activity in Millbrook diminished significantly following additional arrests and prosecutions related to the utility disturbance investigation. However, the police reports from this period documented lasting changes in community vulnerability and law enforcement awareness that would influence responses to future criminal activities. Comprehensive investigation efforts during 2015 to 2017 created archives of information about criminal organization methods that provided valuable resources for addressing subsequent problems. The detailed documentation of surveillance techniques, target selection criteria, and operational methods created a knowledge base that enhanced police capabilities for recognizing and responding to similar activities. Eleanor Vance's archival organization of the 2015-2017 case files created cross-referencing capabilities that allowed investigators to identify connections between past and present criminal activities. Her systematic approach to documentation preservation ensured that investigative insights from previous cases remained available for addressing current problems. The reports from 2018 and 2019 reflected the community's gradual return to more typical crime patterns as the disruptive organized activities were eliminated through successful law enforcement responses. However, subtle changes in criminal behavior patterns suggested that lessons learned from previous law enforcement successes were influencing how subsequent criminal activities were planned and executed. Evolution of criminal behavior in response to enhanced law enforcement capabilities demonstrated the adaptive nature of organized crime that requires continuing innovation in investigative techniques and community protection measures. The police reports from these years documented both the successes achieved through systematic investigation and the ongoing challenges created by criminal adaptation to enhanced security measures. The archives from the late 2010s provided context for understanding current criminal activities by documenting the cyclical nature of organized crime in small communities where limited law enforcement resources create opportunities for sophisticated criminal operations. The historical patterns revealed that criminal organizations periodically test community vulnerabilities while adapting their methods to avoid detection and prosecution. Detective Morrison's analysis of archival materials revealed connections between historical criminal activity, patterns, and current investigations. suggesting that understanding past events was essential for developing effective responses to present problems. The comprehensive documentation maintained by the police department created resources that enhanced investigative capabilities while preserving institutional knowledge about criminal organization. Methods. The careful preservation of case files, witness statements, and physical evidence from previous investigations provided foundations for understanding criminal activity patterns that might not be apparent when current incidents were viewed in isolation. The archival system created by Eleanor Vance ensured that investigative insights accumulated over time rather than being lost when personnel changes disrupted institutional memory. The police report spanning the decade from 2015 to 2024 created a comprehensive record of criminal activity evolution that demonstrated both the persistence of certain criminal organization methods and the adaptive capabilities that allowed criminal enterprises to modify their approaches in response to law enforcement countermeasures. The decade of documentation revealed that Millbrook's apparent tranquility masked ongoing conflicts between criminal organizations seeking to exploit community vulnerabilities and law enforcement agencies working to protect residents from sophisticated criminal enterprises. The struggle played out through cycles of criminal innovation, law enforcement adaptation, and community education that shaped both criminal behavior and police procedures. As 2024 progressed toward the current investigation period, the accumulated archives provided Detective Morrison and his colleagues with comprehensive resources for understanding criminal activity patterns while anticipating potential developments in ongoing cases. The methodical documentation of 10 years of criminal activity created a foundation for more effective law enforcement responses while preserving the detailed history of Millbrook's ongoing effort to maintain community safety in the face of evolving criminal challenges. Asterisk. The Hendrickson farm occupies 340 acres of rolling countryside 5 miles northeast of Millbrook's town center. Its property boundaries, marked by stone walls that were built by hand during the 1800s and have endured through generations of changing ownership and agricultural practices. The farmhouse sits on a gentle rise that provides views across pastures where Holstein cattle graze during warm months and where snow accumulates in smooth drifts during the quiet winter season. Thomas Hendrickson inherited the property from his grandfather 12 years ago, continuing family farming traditions while adapting to modern agricultural methods that require different equipment and approaches than previous generations used. His daily routines begin before dawn with livestock care and equipment maintenance, work that connects him to the land and seasonal rhythms in ways that create deep familiarity with normal patterns of rural life. The first unusual incident at the Hendrickson farm was reported on a Thursday morning in early April, when Thomas discovered that someone had opened the gate to his south pasture during the night, allowing 37 head of cattle to wander onto the adjacent property owned by the Williamson family. The cattle caused no damage and were easily returned to their proper pasture, though the incident raised questions about who might have opened the gate and why someone would engage in such apparently purposeless mischief. Officer Santos responded to the incident report, documenting the gate mechanism and noting that opening it would require knowledge of the farm's layout and the specific type of latch system used to secure the enclosure. The gate showed no signs of damage, suggesting that whoever opened it understood the proper method for operating the latch rather than forcing entry through the fencing system. The investigation revealed no obvious motives for releasing the cattle, as the animals represented no threat to public safety and their temporary relocation created inconvenience rather than economic loss. However, the incident demonstrated that unknown individuals had been present on the farm property during nighttime hours, raising security concerns that extended beyond the immediate gate opening. Thomas Hendrickson mentioned during the interview that he had noticed other small changes around the farm property during recent weeks. Alterations that seemed too minor to warrant police reports, but that gained significance when viewed alongside the gate incident. Tools had been moved from their usual storage locations. Equipment positioning had been changed, and vehicle tracks appeared in areas where no authorized traffic should have occurred. The pattern of minor disturbances suggested systematic observation of farm operations by individuals who were familiar enough with agricultural activities to avoid causing obvious damage while demonstrating their ability to access and manipulate farm property. The psychological impact of these intrusions exceeded their practical significance, creating concerns about escalation to more serious interference with farm operations. Officer Santos expanded his investigation to include other farms in the surrounding area, discovering that the Hendrickson property was not the only rural location experiencing unexplained incidents. The Chun family, who operated a small organic farm 3 miles south of Millbrook, reported similar problems with gates being opened, equipment being moved, and evidence of unauthorized presence on their property during overnight hours. The Chun farm specialized in vegetables and herbs that were sold at farmers markets in the region, requiring careful attention to crop protection and security measures that prevented theft of produce or damage to growing plants. The unauthorized intrusions created particular concerns because agricultural sabotage could destroy months of careful cultivation and planning that formed the foundation of the family's economic livelihood. Mary Chun described finding footprints in freshly tilled soil, prints that followed precise paths between crop rows and suggested deliberate navigation through the planted areas rather than random wandering. The footprints appeared to have been made by someone wearing work boots, though the size and tread patterns did not match footwear worn by family members or workers authorized to access the growing areas. The systematic nature of the intrusions suggested surveillance or reconnaissance activities rather than random trespassing, raising questions about the purposes behind unauthorized observation of agricultural operations. Officer Santos documented the footprint evidence while noting that rural properties offered limited security options due to their size and the multiple access points that existed along property boundaries. The investigation expanded to include the Morrison dairy operation, where similar incidents had been occurring with sufficient frequency to create patterns that suggested organized rather than opportunistic intrusion activities. Robert Morrison, Thomas Hendrickson's cousin, reported that unknown individuals had been interfering with his milking equipment, making adjustments that were subtle enough to avoid immediate detection, but significant enough to affect operational efficiency. The equipment tampering represented escalation from simple trespassing to interference with agricultural operations that could affect animal welfare and economic productivity. Modern dairy operations depend on precise equipment calibration and timing that can be disrupted by seemingly minor adjustments to mechanical systems or computer controls that manage automated milking processes. Detective Morrison's investigation of rural intrusion incidents required coordination with agricultural extension agents who possess technical knowledge about farming equipment and operations that exceeded typical police expertise. The collaboration revealed that the equipment tampering demonstrated understanding of agricultural systems that suggested either professional knowledge or extensive observation of farming operations. The technical sophistication of some interference incidents raised questions about the background and motivations of individuals responsible for the unauthorized activities. Simple curiosity or random mischief seemed insufficient to explain tampering that required specific knowledge of complex agricultural systems and their vulnerabilities to disruption. The railway line that connects Millbrook to regional transportation networks runs along the eastern edge of the farming area. Its tracks elevated on an embankment that provides views across agricultural properties while creating noise that masks sounds associated with unauthorized activities during overnight hours. The railway corridor offers concealment opportunities for individuals seeking to observe or access rural properties without detection by property owners or patrol officers. Parks patrol routes include periodic checks of railway crossings and access points where unauthorized individuals might enter or leave the transportation corridor. The railway company maintains security measures for its infrastructure, though coordination between railroad security and local law enforcement creates opportunities for information sharing about suspicious activities observed along the corridor. The railway embankment has become a recurring feature in reports of unauthorized rural activities, with property owners noting that intrusion incidents often correlate with timing of freight trains that provide both noise cover and potential transportation for individuals who might travel along the railway corridor while conducting surveillance or interference activities on adjacent properties. Freight train schedules create predictable patterns of noise and vibration that could mask sounds associated with unauthorized activities, while the elevated railway corridor provides observation points that overlook multiple agricultural properties simultaneously. The combination of concealment and observation opportunities makes the railway corridor attractive for individuals seeking to monitor rural activities without detection. The investigation revealed that railway corridor access points had been used recently by individuals who left evidence of their presence in the form of discarded food containers, temporary shelters constructed from materials found along the tracks, and footpaths that connected the railway embankment to adjacent agricultural properties. Thomas Hendrickson reported observing lights moving along the railway corridor during late evening hours, illumination that appeared to be flashlights or lanterns carried by individuals walking along the tracks outside normal railway maintenance schedules. The observations occurred with sufficient frequency to suggest regular rather than occasional use of the corridor by unauthorized persons. The railway companies security reports confirmed unusual activities along the corridor, though their primary concerns related to infrastructure protection and train safety rather than the agricultural property issues that motivated local police investigation. Coordination between railway security and local law enforcement created opportunities for comprehensive monitoring of corridor activities that might affect both transportation and agricultural interests. Millbrook Creek flows through the agricultural area before entering the town proper, its meandering course creating riparian zones that provide wildlife habitat while also offering concealment opportunities for individuals seeking to move through rural areas without using roads or other visible transportation routes. The creek corridor connects multiple properties while remaining largely hidden from casual observation. Officer Santos discovered evidence of recent human activity along the creek banks during his investigation of rural intrusion incidents, finding temporary campsites that appeared to have been used by individuals who were familiar with outdoor survival techniques and who understood how to minimize evidence of their presence. The campsites were positioned to take advantage of natural concealment while providing access to water and observation points that overlooked nearby agricultural properties. The creek corridor campsites contained materials that suggested extended rather than overnight occupancy, including food storage systems, weatherproofing materials, and personal items that indicated individuals had established temporary residences in locations where they were unlikely to be discovered by property owners or patrol officers. The discovery of creek corridor campsites raised questions about the relationship between unauthorized rural activities and the vagrant occupancy incidents that had been documented in vacant town properties. The timing and methods suggested possible connections between rural surveillance activities and urban criminal operations that required further investigation. Detective Morrison coordinated analysis of rural and urban incident patterns, looking for connections that might explain the apparent organization behind various types of unauthorized activities affecting Millbrook and surrounding areas. The Analysis revealed temporal correlations that suggested coordination between rural surveillance and urban criminal activities. The Creek Corridor investigation revealed a network of concealed pathways that connected multiple agricultural properties while avoiding roads and other areas where movement might be easily observed. The pathways appeared to have been developed through repeated use rather than single passage events, suggesting that individuals had been moving through the area regularly over extended time periods. Water level fluctuations in Millbrook Creek create seasonal changes in accessibility and concealment opportunities, with low water periods during late summer providing easier movement along the creek bed while spring. Flooding creates opportunities for individuals to approach properties from directions where natural barriers normally prevent access. The seasonal variations in creek corridor accessibility correlated with timing patterns for rural intrusion incidents, suggesting that unknown individuals were adapting their activities to take advantage of changing environmental conditions that affected their ability to move through the area without detection. The old mill site beside Millbrook Creek, 2 miles upstream from town, provides historical context for human activities in the agricultural area, while also serving as a focal point for current unauthorized activities. The abandoned mill building offers shelter and concealment, while the surrounding area provides access to multiple agricultural properties through concealed approach routes. Property records indicate that the mill site has remained unused since industrial operations ceased in 1967, though family ownership has continued through inheritance arrangements that provide legal protection for the property while limiting maintenance and security activities. The combination of legal protection and practical abandonment creates opportunities for unauthorized occupancy that are difficult for law enforcement to address through traditional trespassing enforcement. Officer Walsh's investigation of mill site activities revealed evidence of recent occupancy that included establishment of living areas within the abandoned building, installation of basic utilities using improvised methods, and creation of storage areas for materials that appeared to support other activities conducted in surrounding areas. The mill site occupancy appeared more sophisticated than typical vagrant settlements, involving individuals who possessed technical skills and resources that enabled them to establish functional temporary residences while avoiding detection by property owners or law enforcement agencies. The sophistication suggested organized rather than desperate occupancy motivated by housing insecurity. The investigation revealed connections between mill site occupancy and rural intrusion incidents through analysis of timing patterns and physical evidence found at various locations. Materials found at the mill site matched items observed during agricultural property intrusions, suggesting that the mill served as a base for individuals conducting surveillance and interference activities at surrounding farms at the mill sites. Location provides strategic advantages for individuals seeking to monitor multiple agricultural properties while maintaining concealment and escape routes that would allow rapid departure if law enforcement activities threaten their operations. The combination of concealment, observation opportunities, and transportation access makes the location ideal for supporting organized surveillance activities. The discovery of sophisticated occupancy at the mill site led to expanded investigation that revealed similar establishments at other abandoned rural properties throughout the region. Coordination with county sheriff's deputies identified a network of concealed encampments that appeared to support systematic observation and interference activities affecting agricultural operations across multiple jurisdictions. The network discovery suggested organized criminal activity with resources and planning capabilities that exceeded typical rural crime patterns. The systematic approach to establishing concealed bases and conducting surveillance activities indicated professional rather than amateur criminal organization with specific objectives that remained unclear despite extensive investigation. The summer months brought increased rural activity as agricultural operations intensified, and longer daylight hours provided extended opportunities for both legitimate farming activities, and unauthorized surveillance operations. The investigation revealed that interference incidents often correlated with agricultural schedules, suggesting that unknown individuals possessed detailed knowledge of farming operations and timing. Harvest season created particular vulnerabilities as valuable crops became targets for theft, while equipment operations provided both noise cover and distraction opportunities for individuals seeking to conduct unauthorized activities without detection. The combination of valuable targets and operational complexity during harvest periods required enhanced security measures that strained agricultural resources while creating law enforcement challenges. The investigation expanded to include agricultural insurance companies whose fraud investigation specialists possessed expertise in recognizing patterns of systematic interference with farming operations. The collaboration revealed that similar activities had been documented in other rural areas, suggesting organized criminal enterprises that specialized in agricultural targeting. The insurance industry analysis provided insights into economic motivations that might explain systematic interference with agricultural operations, including commodity manipulation schemes, insurance fraud operations, and theft activities that required detailed knowledge of agricultural systems and schedules. The autumn investigation period revealed connections between rural surveillance activities and equipment theft operations that had affected multiple counties during previous years. The discovery of stolen agricultural equipment at concealed storage locations connected current surveillance activities to broader criminal enterprises that had been operating in the region for extended periods. The equipment theft connections provided evidence that supported more serious criminal charges while explaining the systematic approach to surveillance activities that had characterized the rural intrusion incidents. The investigation revealed that agricultural properties were being targeted by criminal organizations that possessed sophisticated knowledge of equipment values and resale markets. The comprehensive rural investigation created archives of information about criminal organization methods that affected agricultural communities while providing insights into the connections between rural and urban criminal activities. The systematic documentation of surveillance techniques and interference methods created resources for protecting agricultural operations while supporting prosecutions of criminal enterprises. Eleanor Vance's organization of rural incident files created cross-referencing capabilities that revealed patterns spanning multiple years and jurisdictions, demonstrating the value of comprehensive record-keeping for understanding criminal activities that develop over extended time periods. The archival system preserved details that proved essential for connecting apparently separate incidents into coherent pictures of organized criminal activity. The rural investigation demonstrated the vulnerability of agricultural communities to systematic criminal exploitation while highlighting the importance of cooperation between rural property owners and law enforcement agencies. The documentation process created foundations for enhanced rural security measures while preserving investigative insights for addressing future criminal activities. As winter approached, the investigation continued with enhanced coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies and agricultural organizations that shared interests in protecting rural communities from systematic criminal exploitation. The comprehensive approach to rural security created models for addressing criminal activities that cross jurisdictional boundaries while affecting economic activities essential to regional prosperity. The accumulated documentation of rural criminal activities created comprehensive archives that preserved detailed information about criminal organization methods while providing resources for understanding connections between rural and urban criminal enterprises. The systematic approach to investigation and documentation demonstrated the value of thorough record keeping for addressing complex criminal activities that develop over extended time periods. Eleanor Vance discovered the first discrepancy on a quiet Tuesday afternoon while cross-referencing incident reports from the previous autumn. her practiced eye catching a subtle variation in witness testimony that might have escaped notice without her methodical approach to archival review. The initial report filed by Mrs. Catherine Bradley described observing a blue sedan parked on Maple Street for approximately 30 minutes during the early evening hours of October 15th, though her follow-up statement filed 3 weeks later mentioned the same vehicle as being dark green rather than blue. The color discrepancy seemed minor, perhaps attributable to lighting conditions or simple memory errors that commonly affect witness testimony over time. However, Eleanor's systematic review had trained her to note such variations as potentially significant details that might gain importance when viewed alongside other information. She marked the discrepancy in her cross-reference log, a leather-bound notebook where she recorded observations that warranted additional attention during future archival reviews. Mrs. Bradley's revised testimony contained other subtle changes that Eleanor documented during her careful comparison of the original and supplemental reports. The time frame shifted from 30 minutes to approximately 45 minutes. The vehicle's occupancy changed from one individual to possibly two, and the witness's certainty about the vehicle's purpose in the neighborhood decreased from confident assertion that it appeared suspicious to acknowledgement that the activity might have been legitimate. The pattern of testimonial softening intrigued Eleanor, who had observed similar changes in other witness statements during her decades of archival work. Witnesses sometimes became less certain about their observations over time, though the specific nature of Mrs. Bradley's revisions suggested possible external influences rather than natural memory decay or reflective reconsideration of initial impressions. Eleanor's review expanded to include other witness statements filed during the same time period, revealing additional examples of testimonial revision that followed similar patterns of reduced certainty and altered details. 7 different residents had filed supplemental statements during October and November, modifying their initial reports in ways that consistently minimized the significance of suspicious activities they had originally described with confidence. The systematic pattern of testimonial revision exceeded normal variations in witness reliability, suggesting that residents were being influenced to reconsider their initial observations through methods that remained unclear. Eleanor's documentation of these patterns created a foundation for understanding possible intimidation or persuasion activities that might be affecting witness cooperation with police investigations. Detective Morrison reviewed Eleanor's findings with interest that reflected his growing appreciation for the insights that comprehensive archival analysis could provide for understanding complex criminal activities. The testimonial revision patterns suggested organized efforts to undermine police investigations through systematic influence operations targeting citizen witnesses whose observations might threaten criminal activities. The investigation of witness influence activities required delicate approaches that protected resident safety while gathering information about possible intimidation methods. Morrison coordinated with Community Liaison Officer Walsh to develop strategies for contacting affected witnesses without creating additional security risks or compromising ongoing investigation activities. Officer Walsh's background in social work proved valuable for understanding the psychological dynamics that might affect witness willingness to maintain original testimony when faced with subtle pressures or concerns about personal safety. Her interviews revealed that several residents had received visits from individuals claiming to represent insurance companies or legal firms conducting routine inquiries about incident reports. The visits appeared professional and non-threatening, involving individuals who presented business cards and identification while conducting interviews about witness observations. However, none of the supposed business representations could be verified through contact with legitimate insurance companies or legal firms, suggesting fraudulent impersonation designed to gather information about witness knowledge and credibility. Mrs. Bradley described her visit as professional and courteous, conducted by an individual who claimed to represent an insurance company investigating claims related to vehicle incidents in the neighborhood. The interviewer asked detailed questions about her observations while suggesting that memory errors were common in witness testimony and that insurance companies often found initial reports to be unreliable compared to more careful recollections. Insurance company impersonation provided a plausible cover for questioning witness observations while planting suggestions about memory reliability that could motivate witnesses to reconsider their initial certainty. The psychological manipulation was subtle enough to avoid obvious intimidation while effectively undermining witness confidence in their original observations. The investigation revealed that similar false insurance interviews had been conducted throughout Millbrook and surrounding areas, affecting witnesses whose reports might threaten various criminal activities. The systematic approach suggested organized criminal responses to law enforcement investigations, indicating sophisticated criminal organizations that understood the importance of witness testimony for successful prosecutions. Eleanor's archival research revealed historical precedents for witness influence activities during previous criminal investigations, suggesting that systematic testimonial manipulation represented recurring criminal defense strategies rather than isolated incidents. The historical patterns provided context for understanding current influence operations while demonstrating the ongoing importance of protecting witness safety and credibility. The examination of case files from the 1990s revealed similar patterns of testimonial revision following what appeared to be legitimate business contacts with witnesses. Insurance representatives, legal researchers, and survey conductors had contacted witnesses in various cases, resulting in subsequent modifications to testimony that consistently favored criminal defendants or reduced prosecutor capabilities for proving criminal activities. The historical precedent suggested that criminal organizations had developed systematic approaches to witness intimidation that avoided obvious threats while effectively undermining testimony through psychological manipulation and credibility attacks. The sophisticated methods indicated professional criminal enterprises with resources and expertise that exceeded typical local criminal capabilities. Detective Morrison's investigation expanded to include coordination with state police, agencies that possessed specialized expertise in investigating organized criminal activities and witness intimidation operations. The collaboration provided access to investigative techniques and resources that enhanced local capabilities while connecting Millbrook's experiences to broader patterns of criminal organization activities. State police analysis revealed that witness influence operations had been documented in multiple jurisdictions throughout the region, suggesting organized criminal activities that crossed municipal and county boundaries while targeting law enforcement investigations that threatened criminal enterprises. The multi-jurisdictional scope indicated substantial criminal organization resources and coordination capabilities. Meanwhile, Eleanor's archival review uncovered additional patterns of subtle document inconsistencies that extended beyond witness testimony. Modifications to include variations in official reports, property records, and business documentation that might affect criminal investigations. The systematic approach to document review revealed discrepancies that might have remained unnoticed without comprehensive archival analysis. Property deed research revealed minor variations in boundary descriptions that had been filed at different times, changes that might affect determination of where criminal activities had occurred and which jurisdictions had authority for investigation and prosecution. The boundary variations appeared to result from surveying errors or record-keeping inconsistencies, rather than deliberate manipulation, though their cumulative effect could complicate legal proceedings. Business registration records showed similar patterns of minor inconsistencies that might affect investigation of commercial activities used to support criminal operations. Company names, addresses, and ownership information contain variations that could create confusion about corporate identities and legal responsibilities, potentially protecting criminal organizations from prosecution or asset recovery efforts. The document inconsistencies required systematic review that tested Eleanor's organizational skills while creating comprehensive understanding of information reliability issues that might affect criminal investigations. Her methodical approach to identifying and documenting discrepancies created resources for prosecutors who needed accurate information. For building criminal cases, the investigation process revealed the vulnerability of small-town record-keeping systems to manipulation by individuals who understood bureaucratic procedures and possessed patience for conducting systematic document modification activities. The discovery highlighted the importance of comprehensive archival review for maintaining information integrity while protecting legal proceedings from evidence tampering. Officer Martinez's analysis of dispatch records revealed timing patterns that gained significance when viewed alongside other investigation findings. Emergency calls related to various incidents showed subtle clustering that suggested coordination rather than random occurrence, with multiple calls often originating from the same geographic areas during specific time periods that might indicate organized activities. Asterisk. The timing pattern analysis required computer database searches that tested the limits of the department's technological capabilities while demonstrating the value of systematic data analysis for understanding criminal organization methods. The correlation analysis revealed patterns that were invisible when individual incidents were viewed in covert isolation but became apparent through comprehensive review of multiple data sources. The dispatch record analysis revealed that calls reporting suspicious activities often preceded actual criminal incidents by consistent time intervals, suggesting that criminal organizations might be using false emergency calls to assess police response times and patrol patterns before conducting actual criminal activities. The discovery indicated sophisticated criminal planning that incorporated law enforcement response capabilities into operational planning. The false emergency call analysis required coordination with county dispatch services that handled emergency communications from multiple jurisdictions, revealing that similar timing patterns affected rural areas and surrounding communities. The multi-jurisdictional scope suggested organized criminal activities that required comprehensive law enforcement cooperation for effective investigation and prosecution. Eleanor's examination of evidence storage records revealed subtle inconsistencies in chain of custody documentation that might affect legal proceedings if not identified and addressed through proper investigative procedures. The inconsistencies appeared to result from clerical errors rather than deliberate tampering, though their existence highlighted the importance of meticulous record-keeping for maintaining evidence integrity. The evidence storage review process required physical examination of stored materials alongside documentation analysis, revealing that some items had been stored in conditions that might affect their legal admissibility or forensic value. The discovery led to improvements in evidence handling procedures while ensuring that current investigations were not compromised by storage inadequacies. The comprehensive archival review created opportunities for identifying connections between apparently separate criminal incidents through systematic analysis of timing, location, and method similarities. Eleanor's cross-referencing system allowed searches that revealed patterns spanning multiple years and case types, demonstrating relationships that had not been apparent during original investigations. The pattern analysis revealed that certain types of criminal activity occurred in cycles that corresponded to seasonal changes, economic conditions, and law enforcement staffing patterns. The cyclical nature suggested that criminal organizations adapted their activities to take advantage of environmental factors that affected their operational success rates while minimizing detection. Risks: spring months showed increased property crimes that correlated with seasonal population changes as college students returned and tourism activities increased. Summer periods brought different crime patterns focused on rural areas where agricultural activities created both opportunities and cover for criminal operations. Autumn and winter months saw shifts toward indoor criminal activities and urban targeting that reflected seasonal changes in population distribution and activity patterns. The seasonal crime pattern analysis provided insights for resource allocation and prevention strategies while demonstrating the sophisticated planning capabilities of criminal organizations that understood how environmental factors affected their operational success. The pattern suggested that criminal enterprises possessed analytical capabilities that rivaled law enforcement agencies in their systematic approach to operational planning. Detective Morrison's review of investigation files revealed subtle patterns in criminal behavior that suggested learning and adaptation by criminal organizations in response to law enforcement activities. Methods that had been used successfully in earlier crimes were modified when similar techniques failed during subsequent investigations, indicating systematic evaluation of operational effectiveness. The adaptation patterns suggested that criminal organizations possessed feedback mechanisms that allowed them to assess the success of different operational approaches while modifying their methods to avoid detection, techniques that had proven effective for law enforcement agencies. The systematic adaptation indicated professional criminal enterprises rather than amateur criminal activities. The investigation adaptation analysis required comparison of criminal methods across multiple time periods, revealing evolutionary patterns that demonstrated increasing sophistication in criminal planning and execution. The learning curve suggested that criminal organizations possessed training capabilities and institutional memory that enhanced their operational effectiveness over time. Eleanor's analysis of court record archives revealed patterns in prosecution outcomes that might affect criminal organization willingness to risk certain types of activities. Conviction rates varied by crime type and investigation method, creating feedback information that sophisticated criminal enterprises might use for operational planning and risk assessment purposes. Prosecution outcome analysis revealed that certain types of evidence were more reliable for supporting criminal convictions while other investigative approaches often failed to produce successful prosecutions. The patterns provided insights for improving investigation techniques while suggesting that criminal organizations might be analyzing prosecution success rates for operational planning purposes. The court record analysis required coordination with county clerk offices that maintained prosecution files, revealing that criminal organizations appeared to be adapting their methods to exploit weaknesses in prosecution approaches that had proven less effective for achieving criminal convictions. The systematic criminal adaptation suggested sophisticated criminal enterprises with analytical capabilities. Officer Park's patrol log analysis revealed subtle changes in his observation patterns that reflected unconscious adaptation to criminal organization methods. His route timing and focus areas had shifted in response to criminal activities, though the changes were gradual enough that they had not been recognized without systematic analysis of accumulated patrol documentation. The patrol adaptation analysis revealed that criminal organizations were influencing law enforcement behavior through their operational patterns, effectively training police officers to focus attention on areas and activities that did not threaten criminal enterprises while reducing surveillance of areas where actual criminal activities were occurring. The discovery of unconscious law enforcement adaptation to criminal organization methods highlighted the sophisticated psychological manipulation capabilities of criminal enterprises that understood how to influence police behavior without direct confrontation or obvious deception. The indirect influence methods indicated professional criminal organizations with advanced operational planning capabilities. The systematic analysis of overlooked details in police documentation revealed the sophisticated nature of criminal organization activities affecting Millbrook while demonstrating the value of comprehensive archival review for understanding complex criminal enterprises. Eleanor's methodical approach to pattern identification created resources that enhanced investigation capabilities while preserving detailed information about criminal organization methods. The accumulation of subtle discrepancies, timing patterns, and behavioral adaptations created a comprehensive picture of criminal organization sophistication that exceeded initial estimates of criminal capabilities. The systematic approach to evidence analysis revealed that criminal enterprises possessed resources and expertise that required enhanced law enforcement responses and interagency cooperation for effective investigation and prosecution. As autumn progressed toward winter, the analysis of overlooked details continued, revealing new insights into criminal organization methods while creating foundations for more effective law enforcement responses to sophisticated criminal enterprises. The patient examination of accumulated documentation demonstrated that comprehensive archival analysis could reveal criminal organization activities that remained invisible when individual incidents were examined in isolation. The methodical review process created archives of analytical insights that preserved institutional knowledge about criminal organization methods while providing resources for addressing future criminal activities that might employ similar sophisticated operational approaches. The systematic documentation of pattern analysis techniques ensured that investigative capabilities would continue improving through accumulated experience and preserved analytical insights. Asterisk. The oldest files in the Millbrook Police Department archives occupy steel cabinets on the third floor's eastern wall. Their manila folders yellowed with age and marked with the careful handwriting of officers whose careers ended decades before current personnel began their service. Eleanor Vance approaches these historical records with particular reverence, understanding that they contain not merely documentation of past events but insights into patterns of human behavior that transcend individual generations while revealing the cyclical nature of criminal activities in small communities. Officer William Hartwell's reports from 1962-1979 demonstrate meticulous attention to detail that rivals modern documentation standards. His fountain pen creating precise descriptions of incidents that seem remarkably familiar when compared to recent police activities. His February 12, 1963, report describes the theft of garden ornaments from residences throughout the Pine Street neighborhood, incidents that mirror current property crimes with such accuracy that the reports might have been written about contemporary events rather than activities that occurred 60 years earlier. Hartwell documented the systematic nature of the 1963 garden ornament thefts with careful attention to timing patterns, target selection criteria, and methods that demonstrated criminal organization beyond simple opportunistic theft. His investigation revealed that perpetrators possessed detailed knowledge of neighborhood schedules and property layouts, information that suggested extended surveillance activities preceding actual theft operations. The parallels to recent criminal activities create an unsettling sense of historical repetition that extends beyond mere coincidence. The 1963 investigation files contain maps and diagrams that Hartwell created to document theft patterns. His hand-drawn illustrations showing geographic concentrations and timing correlations that match analytical methods used by current investigators. His systematic approach to pattern recognition revealed criminal organization methods that appear virtually identical to techniques employed by contemporary criminal enterprises, suggesting that effective criminal operational approaches remain consistent across decades of social and technological change. Eleanor's comparative analysis of Hartwell's historical documentation with current case files reveals not merely similarities, but precise methodological matches that suggest either remarkable consistency in criminal innovation or the possibility that current criminal activities represent revival of historical techniques by individuals who possess knowledge of previous criminal operations. The precision of the matches exceeds what might be expected from independent development of similar criminal approaches. Officer Hartwell's personal notes, preserved in a separate folder marked with his initials, contain observations about the cyclical nature of criminal activities that he noticed during his 17-year career with the department. His handwritten commentary describes patterns of criminal innovation, law enforcement adaptation, and subsequent criminal modification that created ongoing cycles of challenge and response between criminal organizations and police agencies. The personal notes reveal Hartwell's growing understanding that criminal organizations possessed institutional memory and learning capabilities that allowed them to preserve successful operational methods while adapting to law enforcement countermeasures. His observations about criminal adaptation anticipated many of the sophisticated criminal behaviors that current investigators have documented during recent cases. Detective Morrison's review of Hartwell's files reveals investigative techniques that were advanced for their time while remaining effective for addressing current criminal challenges. Hartwell's systematic approach to surveillance detection, witness interview methods, and evidence preservation created precedents that continue influencing departmental procedures 60 years after their original implementation. The historical investigation files contain correspondence with law enforcement agencies and surrounding communities, revealing that the 1960s criminal activities extended beyond Millbrook's boundaries in patterns that match current multi-jurisdictional criminal operations. Hartwell's coordination with county sheriffs and state police agencies demonstrated understanding that local criminal activities were components of larger regional criminal enterprises. Officer Margaret Sullivan's reports from 1975 through 1992 document the emergence of more sophisticated criminal organization methods that seem to anticipate current criminal techniques by decades. Her investigation of what she termed systematic property surveillance revealed criminal operations that employed many of the same methods currently affecting Millbrook, including false business representation, witness intimidation, and coordinated multi-property targeting. Sullivan's 1978 investigation of unauthorized occupancy in vacant properties uncovered evidence of organized criminal enterprises that used abandoned buildings as operational bases while conducting systematic theft and fraud operations throughout the region. Her documentation of concealed encampments, sophisticated communication systems, and coordinated criminal activities provides templates for understanding current criminal organization methods. The Sullivan files contain photographs of criminal organization materials that appear remarkably similar to evidence collected during recent investigations, including hand-drawn maps, coded communication systems, and operational planning documents that demonstrate systematic approaches to criminal activity. The visual similarities suggest direct connections between historical and contemporary criminal organizations. Eleanor's analysis of Sullivan's investigation methods reveals sophisticated understanding of criminal organization psychology and operational patterns that influenced her investigative approaches. Sullivan anticipated criminal adaptation to law enforcement techniques while developing countermeasures that remained effective across multiple operational cycles. Sullivan's personal correspondence with law enforcement colleagues in other jurisdictions reveals that similar criminal organization activities were occurring throughout the region during the 1970s and 1980s, suggesting coordinated criminal enterprises that operated across multiple counties while maintaining sophisticated operational security. The regional scope of historical criminal activities matches patterns documented in current investigations. The historical files contain evidence of witness intimidation activities that employed methods virtually identical to current false insurance interview techniques. Sullivan documented systematic approaches to undermining witness testimony through psychological manipulation and credibility attacks that match contemporary criminal organization methods with remarkable precision. Officer Thomas Chun's reports from 1985 through 2003 document the evolution of criminal organization methods from the crude techniques of earlier decades to sophisticated operations that incorporated technological advances and refined psychological manipulation techniques. His investigation files bridge the gap between historical criminal activities and contemporary operations. Chun's documentation of the transition from simple theft operations to complex criminal enterprises reveals the learning processes that allowed criminal organizations to adapt to changing law enforcement capabilities while maintaining operational effectiveness. His files demonstrate how criminal organizations incorporated new technologies and methods while preserving successful traditional techniques. The Chun investigation files contain the first documentation of systematic document manipulation by criminal organizations, activities that anticipate current evidence tampering and witness influence operations. His discovery of altered property records, modified business registrations, and fraudulent identity documentation revealed criminal organization capabilities that exceed typical local criminal enterprises. Eleanor's review of Chun's files reveals investigative techniques that were innovative for their time while providing foundations for current analytical methods. His systematic approach to pattern recognition and evidence correlation created methodologies that continue influencing departmental procedures 20 years after his retirement. The historical continuity revealed through archival analysis suggests that Millbrook has been targeted by sophisticated criminal organizations for decades, with each generation of criminals building upon previous methods while adapting to contemporary law enforcement capabilities. The long-term perspective reveals criminal organization institutional memory that exceeds law enforcement institutional knowledge. Detective Morrison's comparison of historical and contemporary investigation files reveals that current criminal activities represent evolution rather than innovation, with sophisticated criminal organizations drawing upon decades of accumulated experience while adapting proven methods to contemporary conditions. The historical perspective provides insights for anticipating criminal organization development and planning, enhanced law enforcement responses. The archived correspondence between historical officers reveals informal networks of communication and cooperation that supplemented official law enforcement coordination. Officers shared insights and observations through personal correspondence that preserved investigative knowledge across personnel changes and departmental transitions. Officer Hartwell's letters to colleagues in neighboring jurisdictions contain warnings about criminal organization methods and recommendations for investigative approaches that proved effective for addressing sophisticated criminal enterprises. His informal intelligence sharing created regional awareness of criminal organization capabilities while establishing cooperation precedents that continue influencing interagency relationships. Historical correspondence files reveal that officers in the 1960s and 1970s understood that they were confronting criminal organizations with capabilities that exceeded typical local criminal activities. Their recognition of organized criminal threats led to investigative approaches that anticipated many of the techniques currently used for addressing sophisticated criminal enterprises. Eleanor's organization of historical correspondence creates chronological narratives that demonstrate the evolution of criminal organization methods alongside law enforcement responses. The documented progression reveals learning processes on both sides of law enforcement conflicts while highlighting the importance of preserving institutional knowledge across personnel changes. The historical files contain evidence that criminal organizations have maintained presence in the region for decades, adapting their methods to changing conditions while preserving successful operational techniques. The continuity suggests criminal organization institutional structures that enable long-term operational planning and knowledge preservation. Officer Sullivan's final reports before retirement contain warnings about criminal organization adaptation capabilities and recommendations for maintaining institutional memory that could support future investigations. Her recognition that criminal organizations possessed learning capabilities superior to law enforcement agencies led to systematic documentation approaches that preserved investigative insights for future personnel. The historical pattern analysis reveals that criminal organizations have repeatedly tested law enforcement capabilities while adapting their methods to exploit discovered weaknesses. The systematic adaptation demonstrates sophisticated criminal enterprises that possess analytical capabilities and institutional memory that enable long-term operational planning. Detective Morrison's review of historical investigation outcomes reveals that criminal organization learning capabilities have enabled them to avoid repeating methods that led to successful prosecutions while refining techniques that proved effective for avoiding detection and conviction. The systematic criminal learning process indicates professional criminal enterprises. The comparative analysis of historical and contemporary evidence reveals that current criminal organizations possess knowledge of previous law enforcement successes and failures, suggesting that they have access to information about historical investigations and their outcomes. The criminal organization knowledge base appears to exceed law enforcement institutional memory in comprehensiveness and analytical sophistication. Eleanor's archival research reveals that criminal organization methods have become more sophisticated over time while law enforcement responses have remained relatively static, creating advantages for criminal enterprises that understand historical patterns and can anticipate law enforcement responses. The analytical gap suggests need for enhanced law enforcement learning and adaptation capabilities. The historical files contain documentation of criminal organization countermeasures that anticipated law enforcement techniques by years or decades, suggesting that criminal enterprises possess strategic planning capabilities that enabled them to prepare responses to law enforcement innovations before they were implemented. The anticipatory capabilities indicate sophisticated criminal organization, intelligence gathering, and analysis. Officer Chun's investigation files contain evidence that criminal organizations conducted systematic analysis of law enforcement procedures and capabilities, enabling them to develop countermeasures that protected their operations while exploiting law enforcement weaknesses. The systematic criminal analysis suggests professional criminal enterprises with analytical capabilities that rival law enforcement agencies. The historical pattern analysis reveals that Millbrook's apparent tranquility has masked ongoing conflicts between sophisticated criminal organizations and law enforcement agencies for decades. The long-term perspective demonstrates that current criminal activities represent continuation of historical patterns rather than isolated contemporary problems. The archived investigation files demonstrate that previous generations of officers understood the sophisticated nature of criminal organizations while lacking resources and coordination capabilities necessary for addressing criminal enterprises that operated across multiple jurisdictions and time periods. The historical perspective reveals ongoing challenges that continue affecting current law enforcement efforts. Eleanor's comprehensive archival analysis creates understanding that current investigations are components of longer historical narratives that span decades of criminal organization, activities, and law enforcement responses. The historical context provides insights for developing more effective strategies while understanding the sophisticated nature of criminal enterprises affecting the community. The systematic review of historical files reveals that criminal organizations have maintained consistent operational objectives while adapting their methods to changing technological and social conditions. The consistency of criminal organization goals provides insights for anticipating future criminal activities while understanding the motivations that drive sophisticated criminal enterprises. As winter deepened, the analysis of historical patterns continued revealing connections between past and present criminal activities while creating comprehensive understanding of criminal organization methods that had developed over decades of operation in the region. The historical perspective demonstrated that current investigations required long-term approaches that acknowledged the sophisticated nature of criminal enterprises with institutional memory and learning capabilities that exceeded typical local criminal activities. The methodical examination of archived materials created foundations for understanding that effective responses to sophisticated criminal organizations required institutional memory and analytical capabilities that matched criminal organization sophistication while preserving investigative insights across personnel changes and departmental transitions. The historical analysis demonstrated the value of comprehensive archival preservation for maintaining law enforcement capabilities that could address criminal enterprises with decades of operational experience. The town of Riverside sits 12 miles north of Millbrook along Route 32. Its population of 2,000 residents supported by a lumber mill that has operated continuously since 1923 and a small police department housed in a converted railroad station that serves as both municipal offices and emergency services headquarters. Chief Robert Dawson has overseen Riverside's 3-officer department for 8 years, maintaining detailed records that complement Millbrook's archives while providing regional perspective on criminal activities that cross municipal boundaries. Eleanor Vance's research into intermunicipal coordination led to her first visit to Riverside's archives in early November, a journey that revealed filing systems and documentation methods that differed from Millbrook's procedures while containing information that proved essential for understanding the broader scope of criminal organization activities affecting the region. Chief Dawson welcomed the collaboration, understanding that small-town police departments benefit from sharing information and analytical resources. The Riverside police files contain reports of garden ornament thefts dating back to 1987, incidents that preceded Millbrook's documented problems by several years while demonstrating similar patterns of systematic property targeting and sophisticated criminal organization methods. The historical precedent suggests that criminal organizations tested their methods in smaller communities before expanding operations to include larger population centers. Officer Karen Mitchell's reports from Riverside's 1990s files document systematic surveillance activities that match methods currently affecting Millbrook, including false business representations, property monitoring, and witness intimidation techniques that appear identical to contemporary criminal organization operations. The consistency across jurisdictions and time periods indicates sophisticated criminal enterprises with standardized operational procedures. The Riverside archives reveal that criminal organization activities in their community followed cyclical patterns similar to those documented in Millbrook, with periods of intense criminal activity alternating with years of relative quiet that created false impressions of problem resolution. Chief Dawson's analysis suggests that criminal organizations withdraw from areas where law enforcement attention becomes intensive while maintaining operational capabilities for future deployment. Detective Morrison's coordination with Riverside investigators revealed shared suspects and overlapping investigation targets that demonstrated criminal organization activities extending beyond individual municipal boundaries. The coordination process created opportunities for information sharing that enhanced investigative capabilities, while revealing criminal organization sophistication that required multi-jurisdictional responses. The files from Riverside's evidence storage reveal materials seized during 1994 investigations that match items currently under investigation in Millbrook, including coded communication systems, property surveillance maps, and operational planning documents that demonstrate consistent criminal organization methods across 3 decades of activities. The material similarities suggest direct connections between historical and contemporary criminal enterprises. Officer Mitchell's investigation notes contain observations about criminal organization adaptation capabilities that anticipated many of the sophisticated techniques currently affecting regional law enforcement efforts. Her documentation of criminal learning processes and operational modification methods provided insights that proved valuable for understanding contemporary criminal organization behaviors. The town of Cedar Falls lies 8 miles southwest of Millbrook, its rural character supported by agricultural activities and a small business district that serves farming families throughout the surrounding countryside. The Cedar Falls Police Department consists of 2 full-time officers and a part-time chief who maintains archives in a converted barn behind the municipal building, files that span 40 years of rural law enforcement activities. Chief Harold Wilson's filing system reflects the practical needs of rural policing, with cases organized by geographic location rather than chronological sequence to accommodate patrol areas that cover extensive territories with widely scattered properties. His archives contain information about agricultural property crimes that complement Millbrook's documentation while revealing criminal organization activities that targeted rural areas with particular efficiency. Cedar Falls files document systematic agricultural equipment theft operations that occurred during the 1980s and 1990s, criminal activities that required detailed knowledge of farm operations and equipment values along with transportation capabilities for moving stolen machinery. The operations demonstrated criminal organization sophistication that exceeded typical rural crime patterns while anticipating methods currently affecting regional agricultural communities. Officer Sarah Thompson's reports from Cedar Falls detail surveillance activities at agricultural properties that match contemporary patterns affecting farms near Millbrook, including unauthorized observation of farming operations, interference with agricultural equipment, and establishment of concealed monitoring positions that provided criminal organizations with detailed knowledge of rural vulnerabilities. The Cedar Falls archives contain correspondence with agricultural insurance companies that investigated systematic fraud operations during the 1990s, revealing criminal organization capabilities for manipulating insurance claims while conducting theft operations that created financial losses exceeding immediate property values. The insurance fraud connections demonstrate criminal organization sophistication that integrated multiple revenue streams from coordinated criminal activities. Eleanor's analysis of Cedar Falls documentation revealed geographical patterns that connected rural criminal activities to urban operations through transportation corridors and communication networks that enabled criminal organizations to coordinate activities across multiple jurisdictions while maintaining operational security. The rural-urban connections demonstrate criminal organization planning capabilities that anticipated law enforcement coordination limitations. The town of Oakwood occupies a strategic location 15 miles east of Millbrook at the intersection of 2 state highways, its position creating transportation advantages that have attracted businesses while also providing criminal organizations with access to multiple escape routes and operational territories. The Oakwood Police Department maintains archives that document transportation-related criminal activities spanning several decades. Lieutenant Margaret Foster oversees Oakwood's 4-officer department while maintaining detailed records of highway-related incidents that provide insights into criminal organization transportation methods and route preferences. Her files contain documentation of suspicious vehicle activities that correlate with timing patterns for criminal incidents in surrounding communities. The Oakwood files reveal systematic patterns of vehicle theft and fraudulent vehicle registration that provided criminal organizations with transportation capabilities while maintaining operational anonymity. The vehicle-related crimes demonstrate criminal organization understanding of law enforcement, tracking capabilities while developing countermeasures that protected operational security. Officer David Reynolds' Highway Patrol reports from Oakwood document surveillance of transportation corridors that criminal organizations use for moving stolen property and personnel between operational areas. His systematic observation of traffic patterns revealed criminal organization logistics capabilities that enabled coordinated activities across multiple jurisdictions. The Oakwood archives contain evidence of communication interception activities that criminal organizations used for monitoring law enforcement radio traffic while coordinating their operational responses to police activities. The communication monitoring capabilities demonstrate criminal organization sophistication that enabled them to anticipate law enforcement responses while adapting their operations accordingly. Eleanor's research into Oakwood's transportation crime files revealed connections to agricultural equipment theft, property surveillance, and witness intimidation activities documented in other jurisdictions, suggesting that criminal organizations used Oakwood's highway access for coordinating regional criminal operations while maintaining operational bases in multiple communities. The village of Pine Grove sits in a valley 20 miles south of Millbrook. Its isolated location creating an environment where criminal organizations could establish operational bases while maintaining concealment from law enforcement observation. The Pine Grove Police Department consists of a single officer who maintains limited archives due to resource constraints and competing responsibilities. Officer Jennifer Walsh's periodic visits to Pine Grove for interagency coordination revealed evidence of sophisticated criminal organization activities that used the village's isolation for establishing training facilities and equipment storage operations. The discovery of concealed criminal infrastructure demonstrates organizational capabilities that exceed typical local criminal enterprises. The Pine Grove area contains abandoned industrial facilities that criminal organizations converted into operational centers during various time periods. Installations that provided training, storage, and coordination capabilities for criminal activities throughout the region. The industrial facility conversion demonstrates criminal organization, engineering, and logistics capabilities. Eleanor's analysis of Pine Grove incident reports revealed patterns of utilities theft and infrastructure manipulation that supported criminal organization operations while avoiding detection by property owners or utility companies. The infrastructure crimes demonstrate criminal organization, technical capabilities, and understanding of rural utility systems. The regional analysis of criminal organization activities revealed coordination networks that connected operations in multiple communities while maintaining operational security through compartmentalized communication and shared resource allocation. The coordination sophistication demonstrates criminal organization management capabilities that enabled complex multi-jurisdictional operations. Detective Morrison's coordination with regional law enforcement agencies revealed that criminal organization activities extended beyond the immediate area to include operations in communities throughout multiple counties, suggesting criminal enterprises with regional scope and significant operational resources. The regional scope requires enhanced law enforcement, coordination, and resource sharing. The comparative analysis of archives from multiple jurisdictions revealed that criminal organizations had developed standardized operational procedures that were adapted to local conditions while maintaining consistent methods and objectives. The standardization suggests criminal organization training and quality control systems that ensured operational effectiveness across diverse environments. Eleanor's regional archival research created comprehensive understanding of criminal organization development over several decades, revealing learning processes and adaptation capabilities that enabled criminal enterprises to maintain operational effectiveness despite law enforcement countermeasures. The long-term analysis demonstrates criminal organization, institutional memory, and strategic planning capabilities. The coordination between multiple police departments created opportunities for information sharing that revealed criminal organization activities that had remained invisible when viewed from individual jurisdictional perspectives. The interagency cooperation demonstrates the value of regional coordination for addressing sophisticated criminal enterprises. The regional investigation revealed that criminal organizations had established support networks that provided operational resources, technical expertise, and strategic planning capabilities that exceeded individual community criminal enterprises. The support network discovery demonstrates criminal organization sophistication that requires enhanced law enforcement responses. The analysis of regional crime patterns revealed that criminal organizations alternated their activities between different communities to avoid concentrating law enforcement attention while maintaining operational capabilities throughout the region. The geographical distribution strategy demonstrates criminal organization understanding of law enforcement resource limitations. Officer Martinez's coordination with regional dispatch services revealed communication patterns that criminal organizations used for monitoring law enforcement activities while coordinating their operational responses. The communication monitoring capabilities demonstrate criminal organization intelligence gathering and analysis sophistication. The regional archives contain evidence of criminal organization recruitment activities that identified individuals with specific skills and knowledge required for sophisticated criminal operations. The recruitment evidence demonstrates criminal organization human resource management capabilities that enabled them to acquire necessary expertise. Eleanor's comprehensive regional analysis revealed that criminal organizations had developed institutional structures that enabled long-term operational planning while maintaining adaptability to changing law enforcement capabilities. The institutional analysis demonstrates criminal organization sophistication that requires corresponding law enforcement institutional development. The coordination of regional investigation efforts revealed that criminal organizations possessed analytical capabilities that enabled them to assess law enforcement strengths and weaknesses while developing operational strategies that exploited discovered vulnerabilities. The analytical capabilities demonstrate criminal organization intelligence sophistication that the regional archival research created, understanding that current criminal activities represent components of larger criminal enterprises that operate across multiple jurisdictions while maintaining sophisticated coordination and resource sharing capabilities. The regional perspective provides essential context for understanding local criminal organization activities. The systematic analysis of regional criminal patterns revealed that effective responses to sophisticated criminal organizations require coordination, capabilities, and resource sharing that exceed individual municipal law enforcement capacities. The analysis demonstrates the necessity of regional cooperation for addressing contemporary criminal enterprises. Chief Holloway's coordination with regional law enforcement officials created frameworks for ongoing information sharing and joint investigation activities that enhance collective capabilities for addressing criminal organizations with multi-jurisdictional operational scope. The coordination frameworks provide foundations for enhanced regional law enforcement effectiveness. The regional investigation revealed that criminal organizations had established operational cycles that moved activities between different communities based on law enforcement attention levels while maintaining overall operational effectiveness. The cyclical operations demonstrate criminal organization strategic planning capabilities that require corresponding law enforcement strategic responses. Eleanor's regional archival organization created comprehensive databases that enable cross-jurisdictional analysis of criminal organization patterns while preserving institutional memory that supports ongoing investigation efforts. The database development demonstrates the value of systematic information management for addressing sophisticated criminal enterprises. The winter months brought continued regional coordination as law enforcement agencies shared information and analytical resources while developing enhanced capabilities for addressing criminal organizations with regional operational scope. The coordination efforts create foundations for more effective responses to sophisticated criminal enterprises that operate across multiple jurisdictions. The systematic analysis of regional criminal organization activities continued, revealing patterns and connections that demonstrate the sophisticated nature of criminal enterprises, affecting multiple communities while creating comprehensive understanding of criminal organization capabilities that require enhanced law enforcement responses. The regional analysis provides essential foundations for understanding contemporary criminal organization challenges.